Chapter 495. With a shake of her sleeves, her figure disappeared from the sky. When she reappeared, she was within 10,000 feet of the divine flying ship, closing in on it with an extremely fast speed. Looking from afar, two afterimages were chasing each other in the sky, creating whooshing sounds as they tore through the air. 10,000 feet, 1,000 feet, 10 feet. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the lady had caught up, her snow-white, exquisite palm clenched into a fist, fiercely waving it toward Su Yu's divine flying ship. At once, a creaking sound could be heard. The divine flying ship shook violently, and the sound of destruction could be heard from within. At the tail of the flying ship, there was a giant fist print, flattening the tail. With a raise of her hand, the semi-manufactured spiritual artifact was slightly damaged. Su Yu felt his heart ache, his eyes burning with anger. He had been continuously chased by this lady, and he was furious. "Damned woman, that's enough. I have no grudge against you, but you are chasing me relentlessly," Su Yu said angrily. Lu Chuyi laughed angrily. "You snatched my treasure, and you still dare to say that you have no grudge against me." Hearing this, Su Yu laughed angrily. "What a joke. I warned you before not to push things too far, or you would regret it." Who was the one who insisted on attacking? "Damned woman, it is not too late to return now. Otherwise, it will be too late to regret it." Hearing such threatening words, Lu Chuyi became even more furious. "You still dare to threaten me? If I do not catch up to you today, where'd I put my face?" With a furious grunt, Lu Chuyi threw another punch. With this lady's frightening physical body, she would probably be able to destroy the divine flying ship with 3 punches. Seeing that the other party was relentless, Su Yu's eyes glowed. "Damned woman, you asked for it." With a creaking sound, a green lion appeared in Su Yu's palm. The lion's body contained a powerful vital energy, and it also contained the attack of a strong martial artist of the fairy realm. It was the life-saving talisman that he had taken from Bai Yu, a treasure that contained the attack of the fairy realm. Lu Chuyi, who was about to attack, felt the ripple. She was first stunned, then revealed a fearful expression. In a situation where her cultivation level was limited, it would be difficult for her to block the attack of the fairy realm with her physical body alone. But looking at the silver-haired lad in front of her, she felt that he was abhorrent. She clenched her teeth and advanced instead of retreating, attacking brazenly. "Bastard, I'll teach you a lesson, even if I'm injured." The green veins on Su Yu's forehead throbbed. This woman looked tranquil on the outside, but she was quite stubborn. "Fine, you asked for it." So you gave a cold hum. The sapphire spiritual lion in his palm suddenly shone with a green light. A misty green palm print appeared, and with an extraordinary force, it struck down from the sky. Lu Chuyi clenched her teeth. The stubbornness in her heart caused her to meet the attack head-on. She changed her attack from a punch to a palm strike. She was already prepared to be seriously injured. However, the strange thing was that just as the palm print was about to hit her, it suddenly changed its direction. With a sidestep, it went around Lu Chuyi and struck the ground beneath her feet. Lu Chuyi was taken aback. Her face was filled with vigilance. Humph! He was playing tricks again. "Take this." As soon as he finished speaking, he sent a palm strike right at Zhang Xian. As for Su Yu, he gestured with his right hand and kept the divine flying ship, using his body to resist the palm attack. Clang! Another palm print appeared on the Eternal Stone King armor. This time, Su Yu was forced to retreat more than 100 feet. The blood in his body churned violently. Unable to suppress it, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Thump! At this moment, the attack of the fairy realm finally struck the ground. Seeing that the attack had really struck the ground, Lu Chuyi was suspicious. Her vigilance deepened. "What kind of trick are you playing?" Before she could finish her sentence, a pathetic groan could be heard from the ground, which had been destroyed by the attack of the fairy realm. Looking down, the ground beneath Lu Chuyi was filled with hundreds of wriggling blood veins, forming the shape of a blood python. The attack of the fairy realm had sliced the blood python into 2. Its head was still in the position of leaping upward, preparing to attack Lu Chuyi. In other words, if not for the attack of the fairy realm, Lu Chuyi would have been attacked. It's that evil creature. Lu Chuyi's expression turned grave. She had personally witnessed the ferocity of the blood veins. They were extremely fast. If she had not been on guard, her body would have been pierced in an instant, and her flesh would have been sucked dry. A moment ago, she had been in a rage, intent on killing Suyu. She had not been on guard against a large patch of blood veins preparing to attack her from the ground beneath her. If not for Suyu's attack, she would have been dead by now. Recalling how the attack of the fairy realm, which should have struck her, had strangely changed its direction. Lu Chuyi looked at Suyu with a complicated gaze, the murderous aura in her beautiful eyes much weaker. When she looked at the palm print on Suyu's chest, as well as the blood mist at the corner of his lips, her heart trembled, her eyes filled with regret. A moment ago, Suyu had wanted to save her, but she had taken the opportunity to injure Suyu. Suyu looked at her, silent. He then charged up into the sky, minding his own business. If he had remained silent just now, this woman might have been killed by the sneak attack of the blood veins. But if she had died, the next target of the blood veins would have been Suyu. Standing high in the sky, Suyu looked down from the ground. With his transparent eyes, his expression gradually turned serious, and he revealed an astonished expression. Under his gaze, the horizon and the ground were like a torrent, a sea of blood crazily surging forward. There were countless blood veins, and there were hundreds of millions of them. Along the way, all living creatures were completely devoured, from small insects, fish, birds, and beasts to large beasts. Not a single one of them was spared by the sea of blood. Looking at the situation, the boundless sea of blood was about to destroy the entire 7th level of the Divine Pavilion. Suyu's scalp turned numb. There were too many of them. Looking across, the sea of blood extended for at least 1,000,000 miles. At that moment, the sea of blood was sweeping toward the rest of the land at a shocking speed, as if it could devour the mountains and rivers. As luck would have it, the two of them happened to bump right in front of the blood sea. The mass of blood veins they had encountered was merely a tentacle of the sea of blood, used to detect the living creatures in front of it. In less than a cup of tea's time, they would come face to face with the sea of blood. What shocked Suyu even more was that because of the destruction of the tentacle, the sea of blood seemed to have detected them, and it suddenly accelerated. Looking at the boundless sea of blood, Suyu's heart turned cold. If he really fell into the sea of blood, even if he had extraordinary abilities, he would die on the spot. It has already grown to such an extent. Lu Chuyi's grave voice came from not far from him. A purple glow flashed past her beautiful eyes, as if it was some sort of pupil technique that could see through the sea of blood. Without another word, Suyu turned around and sprinted in the opposite direction. This direction, coincidentally, was the direction of the stone forest. But the speed of the sea of blood was far above Suyu's. Whoosh! Suddenly, a fragrant wind assaulted him. A jade figure closed in and grabbed Suyu with her palm. Suyu was caught off guard, and his shoulder was grabbed. Shocked, he was about to act when Lu Chuyi's deliberately cold voice entered his ears. If you do not wish to become nourishment for the evil being, stand still and don't move. Hearing this, Suyu hesitated for a moment, then stopped moving. Glancing sideways, he saw that although the lady's expression was cold, her fair cheeks were slightly red. Suyu smiled. Although this lady was as rude and unreasonable as Wu Aoyue, she was still reasonable and knew how to repay favors. Thinking for a moment, Suyu took out the dry cloud 5 elemental formation, releasing the golden leaf that had been sealed within, and threw it to Lu Chuyi. Hearing this, Lu Chuyi caught it with an unnatural expression, muttering shyly, "Who wants you to return it?" Suyu laughed in surprise, but did not continue to reply. Noticing that Suyu was smiling, Lu Chuyi was like a young girl whose thoughts had been seen through. She glared at Suyu angrily, her face flushed. Ever since she started cultivating, as a proud daughter of heaven, she had never encountered such an embarrassing situation. Not only had she been saved by a person who had been trying to kill her, but she had also been returned a treasure. This was unimaginable in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Of all places, this was happening in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Humph! She let out a soft grunt, once again glaring at Suyu before activating the golden leaf with all her might. At that moment, the ground beneath their feet once again moved back thousands of miles. At that moment, the sea of blood seemed to have sensed the abnormality of Suyu and his group. An inhuman roar came from deep within the sea of blood. Following this, the ocean of blood rumbled as a 10,000 zhang tall palm print was formed. This palm print was slightly different from the usual bloodlines. It faintly emitted a silver light. Creak! A shocking scene ensued. The giant palm print disappeared into thin air. When it reappeared, it was 10,000 miles behind Suyu and his group. Sensing the changes behind them, Lu Chuyi's expression changed. So fast, her expression turned grave, and she once again imbued more vital energy into the golden leaf. The ground beneath their feet retreated at an even faster speed. This happened 3 times, and in less than a dozen breaths' time, they had crossed nearly 1,000,000 miles and successfully returned to the stone forest. At that moment, Zhou Ziming and the other 2 were waiting obediently beside the spell, not daring to leave. Seeing that Suyu had also been captured, they revealed expressions of shock. They had expected Suyu to be captured, but they had taken too long. Once they landed, Lu Chuyi looked at the spell and asked quickly, "How much more blood essence do we need?" Zhou Ziming's heart shuddered. "We still need the blood essence of a half-fairy to successfully activate the spell." Hearing this, the 3 half-fairies felt uneasy. They were the only half-fairies at the moment. But Lu Chuyi walked up to the spell, pinching her fingers and offering a drop of blood essence to the spell. It was also blood essence, but Lu Chuyi's blood essence was filled with a powerful spiritual pressure. There was a faint spiritual quality within the blood essence, as if the drop of blood essence was alive. When the drop of blood essence landed on the spell, a creaking sound could be heard. The spell glowed brightly and was fully activated. So he was secretly shocked. A drop of blood essence from a divine master was equivalent to the blood essence of a half-fairy. It was no wonder that she could easily suppress 3 half-fairies without revealing any of her cultivation base. The terror of this woman was unimaginable. Because the spell on the other side has been damaged, Zhou Ziming said, his expression relaxing. "We still need about half a cup of tea's time to successfully activate the spell." Chapter 496. In fact, there was a bloody stench wafting over. "Prepare for battle." Lu Chuyi let out a low grunt, a 3-inch long golden bamboo appearing in her palm. This bamboo seemed to be of the same origin as the golden leaf. But the space energy contained within this bamboo was not something the golden leaf could compare to. From within it, Suyu could feel an extremely cold, murderous aura. This was an attack-type treasure. When Zhou Ziming saw the item, his pupils dilated. The number 1 divine bamboo of Jiuzhou, the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. After seeing the item, Bai Qi and Ming Fei sucked in a breath of cold air. Their gazes toward Lu Chuyi had completely changed. This bamboo has long since disappeared from the Jiuzhou continent. How did this woman get it? Bai Qi was shocked and uneasy, his eyes glowing with a strange light. Suyu saw the expressions of the 3 of them, his heart trembling. This item was definitely a nature-defying treasure. Based on Suyu's senses, the power contained within it was beyond his understanding. If he had used the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, just now he would have died. "This bamboo is too powerful," Lu Chuyi said. "Just a little bit of it, and you'll be in danger of surpassing the fairy realm. All of you retreat. You only need to guard the spell and not let it be destroyed." Lu Chuyi took a step forward, facing the giant bloody palm alone. Suyu understood. No wonder this woman had not used the treasure. The power of the treasure was too great. Just a little bit of its power would have exceeded the limits of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, causing them to be transported out. At that moment, the stench of blood was even thicker. Everyone held their breaths and waited. Bang! All of a sudden, a heaven-shaking stench suddenly descended. It's here. Everyone's hearts turned cold, looking in the direction of the sea of blood. However, from the back of the formation, a terrifying aura suddenly spread out. Not good. The blood-colored palm had teleported behind them. Once it appeared, the bloody palm pressed down with the power to smash the heavens. The expressions of Cho Ziming and the other two above the spell changed, but their expressions were calm as they attacked together. Cho Ziming's eyes shot out two terrifying beams of dark light. Bai Qi and Ming Fei were both surging with ghost qi. One of them used ghost qi to create a huge palm print, while the other created chain. The combined attack of three people who were close to the fairy realm had already surpassed an ordinary early-stage fairy realm in terms of power. However, with a clanging sound, the attacks of the three of them landed on the blood-colored palm print and actually made a clanging sound before all of them were bounced off. There was only a crack on the blood-colored palm, and one could vaguely see a silver light hidden in the blood-colored palm. Suyu recognized that silver glow. It was the silver metal within the body of the monster on the corpse grassland. Suyu was shocked. He had already experienced the hardness of this object. It was not something that could be broken with common sense. The combined attacks of the three of them were unable to shake this palm print in the slightest. At the same time, a look of surprise appeared on their faces. Seeing that the palm print was about to shatter the entire formation, the three of them roared once more and soared into the sky, attacking the palm print together. However, with three consecutive loud bangs, the three of them were easily swatted away like flies. The blood-colored palm print was no longer obstructed, and it slammed down on the formation. Just at this moment, there was a light snort and a ball of golden light flashed across the world. The blood-colored palm print stopped abruptly in midair, following which a golden crack appeared in the center of the palm print, growing larger and larger until it covered the entire palm print. The palm print had been split into two. The intertwined threads of blood instantly disintegrated, falling to the ground and merging into the earth. Ding! A light sound could be heard. A piece of silver metal that had been split into two fell to the ground. Lu Chui raised her hands and grabbed, and the two pieces of metal landed in her palm. She looked at them carefully, and after a moment, she revealed a shocked expression. This is a material that only appears in the demonic realm. Why is it here? Everyone, including Su Yu, stared at the piece of golden bamboo. The power of this bamboo was frightening, far beyond their imagination. They only saw the lady flip her wrist, slicing the blood-colored palm print apart. Even the silver metal, which the attack of the fairy realm could not shake, was sliced into two. Roar! But before everyone could heave a sigh of relief, an inhuman roar could be heard from the distant sky. The voice was majestic and intimidating. The bodies of Su Yu and the rest trembled, involuntarily releasing spirit energy and vital energy to protect their bodies. Cho Ziming was shocked. What is that thing? Why do I feel like I'm facing a divine master? Within the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, the cultivation levels of those who entered were limited to below the fairy realm. But the living beings that already existed within the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion were not subject to this restriction. Lu Chui let out a light grunt. Do not panic, guard the spell. As they spoke, the endless stench of blood rolled over from the horizon. Even though Cho Ziming and the rest could not see it, they could feel an extremely evil aura descending. In Su Yu's eyes, the sea of blood had already arrived. The sea of blood that spanned 1,000,000 li swept over with a majestic aura that seemed to be able to devour everything in its path. In front of the sea of blood, they were as insignificant as a seagull. With a howl, the sea of blood came crashing down. Apart from using the spell to escape, they had no other choice. Whoosh, Shang Shiwilian, who had been hiding far away, flew over and stood on the spell. The youth following Lu Qi also came to the spell, his face filled with fear. Su Yu also retreated slowly, looking at the giant wave of blood that was 100 zhang tall, crashing down. In an instant, They were engulfed by the wave of blood. The millions of blood threads were like bloodthirsty, evil creatures that had discovered living beings, shooting toward them excitedly, wanting to swallow them all. At that moment, a golden light swept in all directions, as if it could split the heavens and earth. The sky full of blood was swept clean, revealing the blue sky that had not been seen for a long time. If one were to look from above, they would see that in the boundless sea of blood, there was a circular empty space that had been swept by the golden light. But the waves behind them surged forward, once again drowning the empty space. But within the 100-jong thick sea of blood, the golden light flashed once again, sweeping out another circular empty space, tightly protecting the area where the spell was. This happened 3 times, the sea of blood advancing wave after wave, the golden light flickering tirelessly. But as time passed, the frequency of the flickering of the golden light gradually decreased, and the sea of blood continued to surge forward. Within the spell, looking at the sea of blood that could swallow them at any time, the crowd could not help but shudder in fear. In front of them, Lu Chui, who was holding the heavenly orchid silver bamboo and resisting the sea of blood by herself, had become everyone's hope. But this treasure seemed to deplete her vital energy to a great extent. After waving it 10 times consecutively, even with Lu Chui's divine master level vital energy reserves, she showed signs of exhaustion. Her fine black hair was slightly wet, and the fine beads of sweat on her forehead reflected a crimson glow within the bloodlight. Her back was wet, and her clothes were soaked. The crowd's hearts skipped a beat. She might not be able to hold on for even half the time. Looking at the never-ending sea of blood, Su Yu said seriously, "Let's give up here. If we give up on the transportation spell, we still have a chance to escape. As long as we stand in the sky, the sea of blood cannot do anything to us. Once the 2 months are up, we will be transported out." Hearing this, the rest of the people had similar thoughts. Although not being able to enter the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion would affect them greatly, it was not as important as their lives at stake. But hearing this, Lu Chui turned her head coldly, looking at Su Yu with a cold gaze. "Do not say this a second time. We must go to the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion." Her cold gaze was filled with stubbornness, and Su Yu found it unfamiliar. It was as if Lu Chui had become another person, a complete stranger. But after waving the heavenly orchid silver bamboo 5 more times, its speed had slowed to its limit. She was panting, and her forehead was covered in beads of sweat. Her face was extremely pale, as if it had lost all color. She had reached her limit, and the activation of the spell still required a quarter of the time. Su Yu opened his mouth, wanting to advise her to give up. But Lu Chui weaved signs with her hands without hesitation, then pointed a finger at her own chest. A pained expression appeared on her dignified face, and she could not help but let out a pained grunt. But she did not stop. What was shocking was that her vital energy had been depleted, and it was unknown where it came from. A majestic, vital energy appeared. "Uncle, don't." The youth following her seemed to understand what Lu Chui was doing, and he could not help but let out a shout. "Your body will not be able to take it if you do this." Under Su Yu's transparent eyes, it seemed as if Lu Chui had activated some secret technique to forcefully overdraft the vital energy in her body. The source of the vital energy did not come from the crystal-like object in her body, but from her flesh and blood energy channels. This was forcefully plundering vital energy at the cost of harming her body. "Shut up. Protect the spell. If the spell is destroyed, I will kill all of you first." Lu Chui let out a cold grunt, her back facing them as she spoke fiercely. Looking at her extremely unfamiliar back, Su Yu could not understand why this woman was so stubborn. With her abilities, this sea of blood could not trap her at all. Why would she be willing to sacrifice the essence of her body to enter the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion? She, who had regained control of her vital energy, once again blocked the impact of the sea of blood. But with every wave, her flesh would wither a little. After 3 moves, her skin had turned yellow. Fortunately, the array formation was finally activated, and it was a little earlier than expected. But it was also at this moment that the unceasing sea of blood suddenly stopped. Regardless of where they were, or the entire sea of blood, all the lines of blood froze. The entire noisy world suddenly fell into a dead silence. Suyu and his group did not relax. Instead, they became even more vigilant. What had happened? Why had the sea of blood suddenly stopped? Clatter, clatter, suddenly in the dead silence. The clear sound of footsteps could be heard from deep within the sea of blood. The footsteps seemed slow, but every step seemed to cross a long distance. The boundless sea of blood suddenly rolled, forming a path in the middle, making way for the two sides. Chapter 497. As the pupils of Suyu and the rest dilated, a human figure stepped out of the blood mist. It was a young man in a silver robe, his hair as red as blood dancing in the wind. His facial features looked as if they had been carved by a knife, as if they had been carved by someone. His figure was unusually tall, his whole body emitting a dangerous aura. Most shockingly, there was no sign of life from his person. However, those dark red eyes were exceptionally lively. Puppet. Lu Chuyi was surprised. The silver figure in front of them was a puppet? It was too realistic. The silver puppet wore a faint smile, sizing up the people present. Interesting. 2 members of the Ghost Clan, 1 Divine Master, and 1. Hee, we meet again. Little brat, we meet again. His gaze landed on Suyu. Suyu was shocked. When had they met before? What is it? You just escaped from my stomach, and you've already forgotten? The silver figure laughed playfully. Hearing this, Suyu's body shook. Corpse Grassland. You are... Could the puppet in front of him be a monster from the Corpse Grassland? Looks like you have remembered. That makes things easier. Return my things now, the silver figure said calmly, clasping his hands behind his back. His things? Suyu had only taken one thing from the puppet's body. That was the 9 jade spiritual pearl. At that moment, the spell rumbled. It had been completely activated. As long as they leapt into the spell, they would be transported to the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. Lu Chuyi held the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, her gaze vigilant as she stared at the silver puppet. She instructed without turning her head. Yuchan, Wei Kong, both of you go in first. She paused, her voice becoming gentler. Little brat, you go in too. I will hold them off for a moment. Her words were directed at Suyu. She still did not know his name. Hearing this, Suyu hesitated for a moment, slowly retreating toward the spell. You be careful too. Don't be too forceful. Bai Qi and the other 2 did not dare leave, standing closely behind Lu Chuyi. Do you think you can leave without my permission? The silver puppet said indifferently. With a wave of its hand, the sea of blood within 1,000,000 miles frantically entered the silver puppet's body. His body was like a bottomless pit, and in the short span of 3 breaths, he had absorbed all of the blood sea within a radius of 500,000 kilometers. The sky and the earth regained their clarity. However, wherever the sea of blood passed, there was only devastation and ruins. All living things were wiped out. Phew, I finally recovered some of my strength. Although the quality of these supplements is average, there's a lot of them. A look of enjoyment appeared on the silver puppet's face as it slowly exuded an unfathomable aura. Later stage of the fairy realm. Lu Chuyi's expression turned grave, but she waved her hand without hesitation. Suddenly, a golden light flashed in the sky and slashed at the silver puppet. There was a faint smile on his lips as he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, not moving at all. Clang! The golden light slashed on his body, but the silver robe on his body only fluttered slightly before it was repelled. Not even a trace of the silver robe was left behind. Heavenly orchid silver bamboo? This bamboo was already extinct in my era. I never thought that there would still be some left in this world. It's a pity. If you had wielded this divine bamboo at your peak, I might have been a little afraid. But now, Lu Chuyi's heart sank. The silver robe on this person was extremely strange. Even the heavenly orchid silver bamboo could not cut it. Let's go. The attack, just now, was already her strongest attack in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, but it had not even left a trace of damage. The strength of this silver puppet was not something that she could deal with at the moment. She, including herself, flew into the transportation spell. Suddenly, the transportation spell flashed with a bloody light, wrapping them within it. The other side of the transportation spell had already been destroyed. Now, they were relying on the blood essence to maintain the five ghost transportation great technique to transport them. The silver puppet laughed disdainfully. I said before, if you want to leave, you have to ask me first. Within its body, tens of thousands of blood threads suddenly appeared. They condensed into a long snake, which whizzed and hit the transportation spell. Lu Chuyi's expression changed. She had already activated the secret technique 4 times in a row, and she was almost at her limit. But now, she had no other choice. She could only forcefully use it once more. A golden light flashed. Lu Chuyi staggered, her body finally reaching its limit. The golden light slashed past, landing on the body of the long snake. Creak! The long snake was sliced open in an instant. Layers of blood threads broke apart, turning into nothingness. However, with a clanging sound, the golden light could no longer cut down halfway and was abruptly bounced off. Looking closely under the bloodline, there was actually a silver light flashing. The silver light was actually formed by intertwining silver threads. The blood threads were only the exterior of the snake. Inside the long snake were the silver threads. Caught off guard, the silver snake whizzed toward them. Lu Chuyi was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Her delicate body was sent flying, and she spat out blood. Having forcefully used the secret technique 5 times, her body was already weak. Now that she had suffered such a blow, her vision darkened, and she fell into a half-conscious state. Suyu's expression changed. With a tap of his toes, he leaped into the air, grabbing the flying Lu Chuyi into his embrace. But just as he attacked, someone else also attacked. It was Lu Chuyi's nephew, Wei Kong. Because of the angle, Suyu had caught her first, and Wei Kong missed. Seeing Suyu carrying Lu Chuyi in his embrace, he could not help but feel angry. But at that moment, the silver snake attacked. Everyone on the formation was sent flying, and the formation shattered into 2 halves with a loud boom. After stabilizing their figures, everyone looked at the destroyed array, and their faces turned extremely ugly. That was their only hope of escaping. Seeing this, the unconscious Lu Chuyi's eyes widened. No! With a low grunt, she fainted as if she had received a huge blow. In order to activate the spell, she had not hesitated to injure her body. But in the end, she had still failed. The scene was dead silent. The spell was gone. What awaited them was the slaughter of the later-stage fairy realm puppet. Despair filled everyone's hearts. The silver puppet laughed leisurely. To be able to become my tribute, you can die without regrets. Suddenly, the silver puppet raised its eyebrows, looking at Suyu. What are you doing? A layer of blood, red, appeared on the surface of Suyu's body. An evil aura was slowly released. This was Suyu's bloodline of the evil ghost. And beneath their feet, where the spell had been destroyed, a ball of weak bloodline of the evil ghost had appeared. That weak bloodline of the evil ghost revolved continuously, revealing a small vortex. Shreds of space energy seeped out from it. Without hesitation, Suyu leaped into the vortex with Lu Chuyi. His figure flickered, his aura instantly disappearing from the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion. This weak bloodline of the evil ghost was the blood essence that Suyu had secretly mixed into the dead people when he had first detected the black chains. His original intention was to destroy the spell as a precaution, but he had not expected the situation to turn out like this. At the critical moment, he had activated that weak bloodline of the evil ghost. Even though the spell had been destroyed, it had been successfully activated, and the space passageway had been successfully opened. And the bloodline of the evil ghost that had mixed into the space passageway, under Suyu's control, revealed the location of the space passageway. That was the space vortex from before. Regaining their senses, Cho, Ziming, and the rest were overjoyed, fleeing into the space vortex one after another. By the time the silver puppet reacted, They had all jumped into the space vortex. A ferocious aura appeared on its face filled with anger. Damn thing, spoiling my plans. How could he have expected Suyu to still have such a trick up his sleeve? Seeing that the space passageway was about to close, the silver puppet leaped into it without hesitation. The world spun, and Suyu suddenly felt that there was nothing beneath his feet. Shocked, he hurriedly revolved his spiritual energy. But what shocked him was that the spiritual energy in his body had completely disappeared, not a single shred left. When he opened his eyes, he was surprised to find that he was actually in a snowy sky, and he was falling down continuously. The ground was more than 100,000 feet high. If he fell, he would definitely be smashed in a meat paste on the spot. That was not all, but there was an unconscious woman in his arms. Their weight stacked together, and the speed at which they were falling was even faster. Suyu's expression changed quickly. He wanted to take out the treasures in his space ring, but his expression changed as he realized that the space ring had disappeared. Looking at his arm, he shockingly discovered that the 9-jade spiritual pearl had also disappeared. His expression was a little ugly. What had happened? It was clearly just a transportation. Why had the spiritual energy in his body and all the items on his body disappeared? At the moment, he was in a dangerous situation. Seeing that the ground was getting closer and closer, Suyu let out a bitter laugh. Was he really going to fall to his death for no reason? Just as he was about to hit the ground, his rapid fall suddenly slowed down. A formless force gently lowered the two of them onto the ground. Suyu had just recovered from a shock, immediately surveying his surroundings. What entered his eyes was a boundless snowfield. It was snowing heavily, and the cold wind was rustling. The coldness was bone-piercing. Once he had calmed down, Suyu felt extremely cold, his whole body shivering. He shockingly discovered that even his body had become that of an ordinary person. In fact, he was so weak that he found it extremely difficult to carry Lu Chuyi. It was one thing for his cultivation base and treasures to disappear, but even his physical body had returned to that of an ordinary person. So you cannot believe it. As he was bewildered, Lu Chuyi, who was in his arms, trembled slightly. Her lips turned blue, and she subconsciously tightened her grip on Suyu's shirt. Her body had also become that of an ordinary person. What was this place? Why had such a situation happened to them? But there was no time to think about it. The bone-piercing coldness caused their body temperature to drop rapidly. In less than a cup of tea's time, they would freeze to death in this world of ice and snow. Surveying his surroundings, Suyu could faintly see a thatched hut in the wind and snow. Carrying Lu Chuyi, he rushed over quickly, only to discover that it was a place that had been abandoned for a long time. It was only big enough to shelter them from the wind and rain. Suyu was delighted. He entered the hut and closed the door, blocking the bone-piercing cold outside. Scanning the area, he discovered that there was only a stone table and a small amount of firewood. Chapter 498. With a happy expression, Suyu immediately ignited the firewood. The warm flames expelled the cold air that permeated the house. Not long after, the room was filled with warmth. Lu Chuyi, who was in a coma, gradually regained her rosy complexion. Her expression also gradually relaxed, revealing a serene expression. She lay in Suyu's embrace like a quiet kitten. Suyu sighed. He did not know where he was, but there was a woman sleeping beside him. As he pondered, Suyu, who had fought many battles, felt fatigued. He soon fell into a deep sleep. At some point, Suyu woke up with a start. He could faintly feel a killing intent. What he saw was a pair of beautiful gem-like eyes, glowing with a dreamy luster. But at this moment, her eyes were spitting fire. "Let go of me," Lu Chuyi said fiercely, clenching her teeth. Regaining his senses, Suyu hurriedly let go, his expression embarrassed. But he had just let go when he felt a slight chill in his embrace. Lu Chuyi left his embrace as well, shivering involuntarily. The firewood in the fire pit had already been burned, and the cold outside was continuously seeping in. Looking around, all the firewood in the room had been burned away. Humph! The ice-soul divine dream spell, how extravagant! Lu Chuyi's face was still red. She looked at the falling snow outside the window and let out a cold grunt. Hearing this, Suyu froze. Illusion spell? Lu Chui glared at him. What else could it be? It's one thing for your cultivation level and treasures to disappear, but even your physical body has regressed to that of a mortal. What else could it be other than an illusion spell? Her words were laced with anger. If not for the fact that her physical body had regressed, how could she have been hugged by a man without any ability to resist? This was the first time Suyu had come into contact with an illusion spell, and he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Even though I know this is an illusion spell, it still feels so real. Lu Chui looked out the window. Of course, the Ice Soul Divine Dream spell is among the top 5 spells in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. It would be strange if you could see through it. Suyu smacked his lips. He knew that this woman was in a fit of anger, so he didn't bother to argue with her. His expression became solemn as he asked, "So, how do we get out of this formation?" More than half the time had passed in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, but the 2 materials needed to cultivate the evil, destroying silver eyes were still nowhere to be found. It's simple. As long as you can find a flaw, you won't be confused by the formation, Lu Chui said. It sounded simple, but how were they supposed to find the flaws? The so-called flaw is the part that you feel isn't real enough. Upon hearing this, Suyu came to a sudden realization. He had been in this place for a day and a night, and apart from the unrealistic changes in his cultivation and physical body, nothing else seemed out of place. The sky was filled with wind and snow, and it was really cold. Suyu racked his brains to think about the small house in the snowfield, but he did not find anything unreal. There were no flaws. At this moment, the night of wind and snow had stopped. Outside the house, the sun was shining brightly, dazzling the pure white snow. Let's go. Let's search the outside world and observe carefully. If we find anything unusual, it will be a flaw. Lu Chui opened the door, and a gust of cold air assaulted her face, causing her to shiver unconsciously. She breathed into her mouth. Suyu stood up and walked out of the house with her. Outside the house, what entered their eyes was a picturesque landscape covered in silver. It was as if time and space had frozen this beautiful moment. The mountains are empty, and the lakes are quiet. Looking back, it seems like a lifetime has passed. Suyu looked at the scene in front of him and sighed. Lu Chui looked to the side, her beautiful eyes blinking. I can't believe you can say something like that. Suyu laughed softly. I think I know where the flaw is. Eh? Lu Chui raised her brows. Where? Why can't I see it? Suyu smiled, his gaze landing on Lu Chui's figure. Her beautiful figure was reflected in his eyes. It's right in front of you. Lu Chui froze, then said in disappointment, Are you saying that I am an illusory being? Continue looking. It was obvious that Lu Chui was her real body, not an illusory one. But Suyu shook his head, sighing. Not in front of me, but in front of you. Hearing this, Lu Chui's eyes narrowed. Are you saying that you are an illusory being? The only thing in front of her was Suyu. It's not me, it's... Suyu's deep pupils shone with intelligence. My eyes. How can a blind person like me see the boundless universe? Suyu's eyes had long been blind. Before this, he could see the world clearly because of his soul eyes. But in this snowy world, he was just an ordinary person. His soul eyes had disappeared, but he could see the mountains and rivers clearly. His eyes, which should have been blind, were not blind here. This was the flaw. What? You were blind? Lu Chui was shocked. She had known Suyu for so long, but she had never realized that he was blind. Suyu smiled but did not speak. The flaw has been revealed. What now? Suyu said. Lu Chui heaved a sigh of relief. Wait for a moment. She had just finished her sentence when the mountains and rivers suddenly twisted, like a piece of paper that had been squeezed tightly. Layers of wrinkles appeared. Suyu and Lu Chui were like figures in a painting, also twisted. Then, the world in front of them sank into darkness. Suddenly, Suyu felt a warmth in his embrace. He slowly opened his eyes to find a lady lying in his embrace, slowly opening her eyes. There were traces of blood at the corners of the lady's lips. Wasn't this Lu Chui, who had been injured by the silver puppet? At this moment, they were standing side by side on a spell atop a mountain peak. Near them was a youth with his eyes closed. It was Lu Chuyi's disciple. His features were ferocious, as if he had fallen into some kind of illusion and was unable to free himself. Lu Chuyi slowly opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was Su Yu's face. She could not help but blush, struggling out of Su Yu's embrace. Sensing for a moment, she confirmed that her cultivation level and abilities had recovered, then heaved a sigh of relief. Su Yu cautiously used his transparent eyes to scan the surroundings, confirming if there were any enemies. But other than them and Wei Kong, Chou Ziming, Shang Shuolian, and the others were nowhere to be seen. Could it be that they had not been transported here? Su Yu was confused. Just as he was about to retract his transparent eyes, he saw a round plate buried in the ground beneath his feet. With a thought, Su Yu tapped the tip of his foot. A round plate covered in symbols flew out from beneath the spell. The round plate was bone-chilling to the touch, emitting waves of cold energy. The quality of this item was extraordinary. This is the Ice Soul Divine Dream Spell spellboard, Lu Chuyi said. Its use is to trap enemies. It looks like it can still be used 2 more times. Putting aside the number of times it can be used, just based on its power, it is already considered a middle-grade spiritual artifact. Middle-grade spiritual artifact? Su Yu's heart shook violently. At this moment, after taking out the spellboard, Wei Kong awoke from his illusion. Coincidentally, he saw the scene in front of him, his pupils dilating. "Uncle, how are your injuries?" Wei Kong stepped forward concerned. Lu Chuyi waved her hands. "I'm fine." This is surveying the surroundings. Lu Chuyi finally felt that something was amiss. This did not seem to be the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion. After observing for some time, she could not help but gasp. Her gaze toward Su Yu was filled with surprise. This human king kid had surprised her time and time again. Wei Kang's expression darkened as he observed the situation. He was clearly beside her, but Lu Chuyi suspected that it was Su Yu who had done it, ignoring Wei Kong. Just how much did Uncle care about this silver-haired kid? "I think what we should be more concerned about is where the 4 half-fairies went. Could they have been left behind by the silver puppet at the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion?" Lu Chuyi's expression turned cold. She closed her eyes to sense the surroundings, her expression changing. "I think we are in trouble. The 4 half-fairies are at the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. In other words, if they could enter, there was no reason for the silver puppet not to enter the 8th level." Thinking back to the unrestricted cultivation level of the later stage fairy, Su Yu's expression darkened. If they encounter the puppet, they would not have any chance of survival. "The few of them seem to have split up at the transportation spell," Lu Chuyi said thoughtfully. "Now, they are heading toward the center of the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. That is where the mysterious heavenly palace is." Suddenly, a worried expression appeared on her face. "But I do not know where Yu-chan is. I did not leave a seal on her, and I do not know if she has come to the Divine Pavilion." Su Yu vaguely remembered that Yu-chan had been the first to enter the space passageway. With a thought, Su Yu was stunned to discover that there was a space energy that had cut off the connection between the two of them. He was unable to detect Yu-chan's exact location. The only thing he could be sure of was that she was within the spell. "No matter what, let's go to the mysterious heavenly palace first," Su Yu said. Lu Chuyi nodded with a heavy heart. She clenched her fair hands secretly, and a resolute look flashed in the depths of her eyes. "All right." Saying this, Su Yu stored the Ice Soul Divine Dream spell into his space ring. "Wait." Wei Kong had been staring at Su Yu. When he realized that Su Yu had claimed the spell board as his own, as if no one else was around, he was dissatisfied. "Uncle, this spell board was discovered by both of us. Isn't it too much for him to claim it for himself?" Su Yu paused for a moment, glancing sideways. "Discovered it together?" "Yes, it was indeed discovered by me and your uncle together. But it does not seem to have anything to do with you, right?" If Su Yu had not taken out the spell, who knew how long Wei Kong would have been immersed in it? "You have to ask for Uncle's opinion first." She did not say anything. "Why do you have to keep it for yourself?" Wei Kong questioned. As a disciple of the Purple Cloud Palace and a disciple that Lu Chuyi had brought personally, if Lu Chuyi had made the decision, she would have given him the precious spell disc to protect himself. Why would it belong to a small disciple of an affiliated faction? In terms of status, Lu Chuyi was an outer sanctum elder of the Purple Cloud Palace and the manager of the moon-glowing clear ship. Moreover, the returning Principal Palace and the moon-glowing clear ship were forces of the same level. Furthermore, Suyu was a small disciple of the returning Principal Palace. The difference in status between the two was too great. No matter what, Suyu would not get the spell disc. Suyu shrugged his shoulders and smiled. Your uncle will give it to me, right, Senior Lu? The veins on Lu Chuyi's forehead twitched. She did not care about the spell disc, but Suyu's confident look made her feel a little indignant. Glaring at Suyu secretly as a warning, Lu Chuyi's expression turned solemn. There is no harm in giving him the spell disc. Let's set off. Wei Kong was speechless. Feeling Lu Chuyi's bias, he could not help but be furious. A strange expression flashed in the depths of his eyes. Whoosh, 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 the three of them flickered, disappearing from their original positions. For hours later, a cool breeze blew over. It was a lively and pretty 15-year-old girl who had suddenly descended. Her large eyes looked at her original position in confusion. After sensing it carefully, she was slightly disappointed. The special body type that Master mentioned did not appear. Seriously, the person who had tampered with the spell was this girl. She had no choice but to take out the compass again. With a turn of the needle, she immediately pointed at the center of the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion. Oh, she has already entered the mysterious Heavenly Palace. How did she enter? The young girl opened her eyes wide, her expression adorable. Very quickly, she let out a smile. Haha, I have finally found it. After saying this, her petite figure flickered and flew in the direction of the mysterious Heavenly Palace. On the other side, a silver figure descended from the void. It was the silver puppet, who had also entered the space passageway. Surveying the surroundings, the silver puppet licked its lips excitedly. The 8th level? What rich resources! Looks like there will be many tributes. But its eyes glowed with ferocity. But I must first find that damned lad from the human race. He took my things and still dares to ruin my plans. Although the world is big, no one can save you. Chapter 499. A day later, on a boundless plain, 3 figures could be seen galloping. They were Lu Chuyi, Suyu, and the others. In the vast grassland, there was a very strange existence of a very steep and dangerous peak. The mountain peak, which should have been a vast plain, had appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, the appearance of the mountain peak was also very strange. It was not a simple mountain peak. Instead, it was formed by 5 straight, precipitous mountain peaks piercing the clouds. It was strange. From the middle of the mountain, layers of black clouds surrounded the 5 peaks. The clouds rolled, as if there was a ferocious monster within. Looking at it from afar, it sent shivers down one's spine. Looking at the peak, Suyu had an ominous feeling, his soul feeling suppressed. This is the mysterious Heavenly Palace, the hub of the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. Lu Chuyi heaved a sigh of relief, her face filled with excitement. To think that the so-called mysterious Heavenly Palace was not a palace, but a mountain peak formed by 5 peaks. Suyu could not suppress the uneasiness in his heart, not daring to relax. Since the mysterious Heavenly Palace is the hub of the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, there should be no danger, right? The Thunder Emperor Mountain was filled with danger, guarded by a lightning spirit close to the Divine Master level. There was no reason the mysterious Heavenly Palace would not be in danger. His words caused Lu Chuyi, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, to crease her brows. Danger? Of course. Even fairy realm fighters could fall at any time. In other words, the danger might not be great for her, but might not be the case for Suyu and the others. Elder, please speak frankly, Suyu pleaded. Lu Chuyi looked at Suyu. Seeing that you have helped me along the way, I will tell you. Information regarding the mysterious Heavenly Palace was not something an ordinary person could easily obtain. At least, wandering martial artists could forget about obtaining specific information about the mysterious heavenly palace. The fact that she was willing to tell him the truth was indeed a favor that was neither too big nor too small. The mysterious heavenly palace is filled with danger, she said. There are countless ferocious, demonic beasts, and there are fairy realm beasts. Many people who enter have fallen, becoming food for the ferocious beasts. But compared to the true danger of the mysterious heavenly palace, these dangers are not worth mentioning. Hearing this, Su Yu's heart shuddered. A ferocious beast at the level of the fairy realm was an invincible existence in such an environment, where one could not use techniques that surpassed the fairy realm. If such a ferocious beast was not considered dangerous, then what was considered dangerous? There are two real dangers. The first is the tribulation thunder of heaven and earth contained within this mountain. When Lu Qi said the word tribulation thunder, a grave expression appeared on her pretty face. She, who had undergone the heavenly tribulation, understood very well how terrifying it was. The power of the tribulation is hidden in the 5 peaks. Outsiders can't detect its existence, but once they encounter it, there's no way they can survive. Because that tribulation lightning could destroy even almighty divine masters. Based on what I know, it should have been left behind by a Thunder Path divine master who was trapped in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. As for the specific purpose, I do not know. Lightning Tao God Lord? Su Yu was startled. Could this be the Thunder Emperor who had left behind a legacy? Speaking of which, when Su Yu was in the Thunder Emperor's secret chamber, he had only seen the Thunder Emperor's object of determination. However, he had not seen his remains. Could it be that the Thunder Emperor had not died back then, but had left behind tribulation lightning in the heavenly mystery palace? If I encounter the tribulation thunder, I can use the fighting power of the fairy realm at any time and be transported out of this world, Lu Qi said. Su Yu and Wei Kong were both shocked. How powerful was the tribulation thunder that could kill a divine master? With their abilities, there was indeed no way they could survive if they encountered it. There are not many people who can encounter the tribulation thunder, Lu Qi said. If you are lucky, you should not encounter such danger. However, the second danger in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion is something you must face no matter what. So you thought quickly. What else in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was more frightening than the divine master's tribulation thunder? What is more dangerous than the tribulation thunder is human. Human? Su Yu was obviously surprised, his eyes flashing. Are you talking about the silver puppet that we are about to encounter? To his surprise, Lu Qi shook her head. No, it is indeed dangerous. However, the 5 peaks of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion are huge. The chances of you encountering it are even lower than encountering the tribulation thunder. So you did not understand. Could it be that other than us, there are other people who have entered the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion? Could it be that the spell that leads to the 8th level of the divine pavilion is not the only one that we saw? Hearing this, Lu Qi nodded her head, then shook her head. Although we did discover that there was only one transportation spell after more than 100 explorations, there were 1 or 2 times when it seemed like there were people who bypassed the transportation spell and entered the 8th level. This means that there could be another transportation point. We cannot rule out the possibility that there are other people besides us who have entered the mysterious heavenly palace in the 8th level of the divine pavilion. However, the people I'm talking about are not them, but the masters of the mysterious heavenly palace. The masters of the mysterious heavenly palace? Su Yu was shocked. There were other people in the mysterious heavenly palace? They call themselves the masters of the mysterious heavenly palace. When a mysterious heavenly palace appeared, they existed in the 5 peaks, protecting the 5 peaks. Their abilities are all at the level of half-fairy, and their abilities are not to be underestimated. If you were to encounter one of them, the 2 of you might be able to put up a fight. However, there are 100 of them. With such numbers, even if I were to encounter them, with my cultivation level being restricted, I could only choose to retreat. Hearing this, Su Yu's expression changed. 100 strong martial artists of half-fairy? Although Suyu had the abilities to fight any strong martial artists of half-fairy, it would be difficult for him to deal with 100 of them. However, this was not the worst part. However, what is even more frightening is that there could be strong martial artists of the fairy realm among them. Strong martial artists of the fairy realm? Suyu pondered. Even strong martial artists of the fairy realm, with their cultivation level being restricted, could not surpass that of the fairy realm. Wait! Suyu's expression gradually turned serious, and he took in a breath of cold air. What do you mean is that they're all local living beings, and hence are not restricted by their cultivation level. Hence, they can unleash abilities that surpass the fairy realm? Lu Chuyi nodded. That is indeed the case. Although there is no concrete evidence, according to my conjecture, there must be strong martial artists of the fairy realm among the 100 guardians. If we were to encounter them, anyone who enters the mysterious heavenly palace would die. Suyu's expression flickered with uncertainty. Lu Chuyi had said so much, and it was obvious that she was warning Suyu not to take the risk. However, now that things had come to this, and the silver puppet was very likely nearby, he could only hide in the mysterious heavenly palace. Let's go in and take a look. Suyu secretly took a breath, maintaining a calm expression. On the other hand, Wei Kang's forehead was covered in a layer of sweat. Although he was trying his best to remain calm, the unease in his eyes could be easily seen. Since you're already prepared, let's set off. Lu Chuyi looked at Suyu. Follow behind me. After saying this, she led Suyu and Wei Kang toward the third peak, flying toward it. Chapter 500. The Mysterious Heavenly Crafting Legacy? Suyu was slightly suspicious. Could it be that Lu Chuyi had risked her life to come to the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion for the crafting legacy? Lu Chuyi's beautiful eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement, but there was also a hint of worry. Let's hope so. She suddenly noticed that Suyu, who was at the side, had a confused look on his face. She could not help but ask curiously, "Did your teacher not tell you about the legacy of the mysterious heavenly palace?" Suyu felt guilty, but his expression was calm. Master only asked me to follow senior sister Yu-chan to broaden my horizons. He did not say much. Was that so? Lu Chuyi naturally did not believe him. Putting aside the fact that Suyu's abilities were far above Yu-chan's, how could he have received Yu-chan's guidance to broaden his horizons? It was more likely that Yu-chan had received his protection. Moreover, Suyu had many treasures with him, especially the Dry Cloud 5 elemental formation, which was a divine master's treasure, which was refined just for Suyu to protect his life. It was obvious that Suyu's mission wasn't to come here to experience it. However, she did not pursue the matter. Instead, she said, these 5 mountains each represent a type of inheritance from the Heavenly Arcana Palace. They are respectively crafting weapons, alchemy, cultivation methods, enlightenment, and materials. Every inheritance is extremely shocking, especially the crafting of weapons and materials. Among the 5 great legacies of the mysterious Heavenly Palace, the craftsmanship and materials are the strongest. If you can obtain the craftsmanship legacy, you will become a master craftsman in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Craftsmanship and materials? So he was not interested. Uncle, are you a top master craftsman in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands? Even Elder Ouyang Zi of the 2 palaces is full of praise for her craftsmanship talent. Wei Kang looked at Lu Chuyi with admiration and respect from the bottom of his heart. She was the top female cultivator in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. She also had extraordinary talent in the art of refining tools. Apart from Elder Ouyang Zi, there were few in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands who could compare to Lu Chuyi. However, Lu Chuyi shook her head solemnly. There is always someone better out there. The so-called master craftsman might have some fame in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, but in the wider world, they are just beginners. This is what Ouyang Zi lamented. Even he is like this, let alone me. So you did not expect this woman to be a very powerful crafting master. Thinking about it, she must have insisted on entering the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion for the legacy of crafting equipment. Recalling how this woman had risked her life to enter the 8th level of the divine pavilion, and how she had revealed a strange expression when Suyu tried to stop her. Suyu could not help but sigh. This woman's dedication to cultivation was exceptionally shocking. However, Suyu might not be interested in craftsmanship, but materials. Senior, may I ask what the legacy of materials means? Suyu asked. Lu Chui had a faint smile on her face. Why? Are you thinking of inheriting the materials? I advise you to save your money. The legacy of materials is the most important area of protection for the Heavenly Mysteries Palace. Not to mention you, even I cannot enter. In the past 100 years, there have been people who have set their eyes on it. Furthermore, over the past 100 years, the majority of the materials have already been taken by the protectors. Even if there were some precious items, it would be impossible for them to remain until now. Is that so? Suyu was greatly disappointed. If that was the case, then the possibility of finding the lightning avoiding silver pearl and the blood of a real dragon in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was nearly zero. It is said that within the legacy of materials, there's a treasure from the world of ghosts and souls that almost destroyed the mysterious heavenly palace. It was a lightning-based treasure that suppressed it. Suyu subconsciously probed. What kind of ghost treasure could destroy the mysterious heavenly palace? What is the lightning-based treasure that suppressed it? Lu Qi looked at Suyu meaningfully, but she continued to explain, This is the information that I obtained from the ancient books in the faction. Although there are only a few words, if my guess is correct, it should be an extremely powerful ghost-based supreme treasure, which is enough for divine masters to fight over. And the item that's suppressed is the famous lightning avoiding silver pearl of Jiuzhou. This pearl is used to ward off the heavenly tribulation. Only some old monsters have one or two of them. It is impossible for the outside world to have them. For Lu Qi, an almighty divine master, to call an old monster, it was definitely an existence that surpassed the divine masters. But the words lightning avoiding silver pearl stimulated Suyu, causing his heart to beat wildly. The lightning avoiding silver pearl really existed in the mysterious heavenly palace. This piece of news was a pleasant surprise. The treasure used to suppress the ghost treasure was the lightning avoiding silver pearl that he had been searching for so long. He needed two items for the evil-destroying silver eyes. The first was the undead herb of the netherworld, which he had now obtained. The second was the lightning avoiding silver pearl. However, Suyu suppressed his excitement, and his face was calm. No one could tell what he was thinking about. Lu Chuyi creased her brows in suspicion, but did not ask any further. At this time, they had successfully landed halfway up the third mountain. Above their heads was an endless world of fog that they couldn't see through. Within the rolling fog, the auras of ferocious beasts could be faintly discerned. Occasionally, the auras of half-fairies could be felt. Roar. At this moment, a low roar could be heard. A giant green tiger had pounced out from the white fog without warning. The fog was extremely strange. The giant green tiger had been so close to them, but they had not detected it at all. Oomph. Lu Chuyi let out a light grunt, raising her right palm and pressing toward the giant green tiger in the air. The giant tiger let out a pathetic grunt as it was forcefully pressed to the ground. Its bones were shattered, and it let out a furious roar. Lu Chuyi let out another cold grunt, clenching her fist. With a crack, the giant tiger's head was twisted off. Only then did the tiger stop roaring. Seeing this, Suyu could not help but worry. She had only managed to kill this Shui Ling-level ferocious beast after attacking twice. It looked like her injuries were still very serious. She had forcefully activated the heavenly orchid silver bamboo in front of the stone forest formation. Coupled with the attack from the silver puppet, her injuries were not light. Her current abilities were probably less than a tenth of what they had been before. If she encountered Cho, Ziming, and the others again, the one in danger would be her. This green tiger is very strange. From what I know, these ferocious beasts do not leave the fog easily. But in order to kill us, it actually left the fog. Moreover, it seems unusually violent. Lu Qi stared at the green tiger's corpse, slightly creasing her brows. She thought for a moment, but could not come up with an answer, so she shook her head. Forget it, Lu Chui said, stepping into the fog. Let's leave quickly. The commotion here has probably attracted the attention of the other ferocious beasts. Su Yu and Chu Chui followed closely behind. In no time, the furious roars and pathetic cries of ferocious beasts could be heard within the rolling white fog. The fog rolled and evaporated, creating a spectacular sight. Half a day later, the three of them leaned against a giant rock, panting. Lu Chui's face was full of fatigue, her condition worse than Su Yu's. It was obvious that her injuries had flared up, but her expression was one of determination. Chapter 501. According to the records, even though there were many ferocious beasts in the fog, there was a limit. In the past, when teams enter the mountains, they would usually encounter 10 to 30 ferocious beasts. But along the way, they had encountered more than 50 ferocious beasts. It is indeed strange. Could it be that we enter the wrong time? Lu Chui was also puzzled. Combined with the giant green tiger that had leaped out of the fog to attack them, it was clear that something strange had happened. Su Yu's unease grew. After thinking for some time, he used his transparent eyes to examine the corpse of a ferocious beast that had just been killed. From its appearance, there was nothing unusual about the ferocious beast. The only difference was that even in death, there was still a hint of brutality in its eyes. Along the way, there were no exceptions to the 50 ferocious beasts. Squinting, Su Yu's transparent eyes penetrated deep into the beast's body, past its fur, flesh, and blood. After looking, Su Yu suddenly discovered something. His heart could not help but tremble. In the mind of the demonic beast, there was an obscure symbol. The symbol emitted an obscure and dark energy. It was this energy that caused the demonic beasts to be unusually brutal. Looking at the rest of the demonic beasts, it was the same. They were being controlled by someone. Something might have happened in the land of legacy. Let's go. Lu Chui's heart tightened, and she hurriedly moved forward. Luckily, they had walked for half a day and were not far from the land of legacy. Not long after, they successfully arrived at the land of legacy. In the dense fog that covered the sky, a towering black figure was faintly discernible. Looking at it, it was actually a brick bed the size of a house. The brick bed was square in shape, 1,000 feet long and wide. It was a spectacular sight. The fire within the brick bed illuminated the sky. From afar, the entire brick bed looked like a volcano. Be careful. This is the land of legacy for craftsmanship. Based on past experience, there are at least 9 half-fairies guarding it, and there is also a half-fairy with vital energy crystals as the leader. Vital energy crystals were equivalent to existences like Cho Ziming. In the mysterious, heavenly, divine pavilion, they were equivalent to the strongest power. With their current situation, it would be difficult for the three of them to fight against 9 half-fairies and a half-fairy with vital energy crystals. This was without alerting the other 4 peaks and attracting enemy reinforcements. Inu, if you're willing to help me, I can promise you one thing after this is over. Having fought with Su Yu before, she knew Su Yu's fighting abilities well. He could even fight against people like Cho Ziming. Wei Kong, who was at the side, was stunned when he heard this. His martial uncle was actually asking a human sovereign realm junior for help. In terms of abilities, he was much stronger than Su Yu. Su Yu smiled bitterly. Elder, you think too highly of me. With my abilities, how am I qualified to assist you? His words surprised Lu Chui. In the Ice Soul Divine Dream spell formation, he had stayed by her side even when she was severely injured. Now that she had a favor to ask of him, he had rejected her without hesitation. A gloomy look appeared in Lu Chui's eyes, but she didn't blame him too much. After all, Su Yu's ability to deal with them was really quite dangerous. However, since you have invited me, I will do my best. Just as Lu Chui was feeling disappointed, Su Yu smiled and spoke. Lu Chui was still feeling disappointed, but when she heard such a reply, her worries turned to joy, her face revealing a hint of delight. When she realized that she had lost her composure, she couldn't help but feel awkward. An almighty divine master had actually asked a human sovereign realm junior for help. Not only that, but she had even revealed a look of delight. Thinking of this, she glared at Suyu. In front of this guy, she didn't have the demeanor of an almighty divine master. In response, Suyu only shrugged and smiled. How could he miss the promise of an almighty divine master? Making up their minds, the three of them approached the pit carefully. When the three of them approached the pit, they were astonished to find that there were no guards around the pit at all. Filled with suspicion, the group leaped into the air, standing above the pit and looking down. They could only see flames shooting up into the sky. There were flames of high temperature everywhere. Even the weakest among them was only slightly inferior to the origin flame. Furthermore, this was only the outermost layer of flames. The flames within the pit were even more terrifying. Let's go in and take a look. Lu Chuyi's brows were tightly knitted together, filled with worry. Lu Chuyi was naturally unafraid of flames of this level. She jumped in without even using her vital energy to protect herself. Vital energy surged around Wei Kang's body, and he jumped in without a care. The flames that Suyu had cultivated were even more unafraid of this kind of flame, and he jumped straight in. In a breath's time, the three of them entered the bottom of the pit. At once, a shocking wave of heat assaulted them. Layers of purplish-red flames burned at the bottom of the pit, burning everything in the pit into ashes. Even the air was burned into a vacuum. The power of this flame was comparable to the flames of the origin. Suyu was shocked. How precious were the flames of the origin in the Jinlong continent? Suyu had the opportunity to cultivate the origin with the help of an origin crystal. But here, the entire bottom of the pit was filled with the flames of the origin. Furthermore, due to being burned by the flames of the origin all year round, the bottom of the pit was roasted a fiery red. There was even a shred of flames that Suyu was afraid of, flames that were even more frightening than the origin. At the bottom of the crimson pit, there was an open stone door. The surface of the stone door was in a mess, as if it had been forcefully attacked by someone. As expected, something has happened. Lu Chuyi's expression sank. This door has never been opened by anyone before. Now it has been opened. Perhaps the legacy had already been stolen by someone. With a flash of jade, Lu Chuyi anxiously leaped into the stone door, entering a passage filled with scorching lava. Suyu and Wei Kong followed closely behind. After half a cup of tea's time, Suyu did not know how deep he had gone. It seemed as if he had already entered 100,000 feet underground. The temperature of the flames was getting higher, until Suyu gradually creased his brows. Wei Kong was no different, his teeth already clenched together. Luckily, they had finally reached the end of the passage. It was an underground space that had been artificially created, and its field of vision was wide. With a glance, one could see that in the center of the space, there was a pool of black flames. Within the pool, surging lava flowed endlessly, occasionally releasing a pungent gas and a terrifyingly high temperature. Even from 1,000 feet away, Suyu felt his whole body prickling with pain. It was extremely uncomfortable. He could not help but be shocked. What kind of flame was this? In terms of power, it probably far surpassed the flames of the origin. What was even more shocking was that in the center of the black lava pool, there was a yellow stone tablet inserted into the lava. It was not affected by the lava in the slightest. On the stone tablet, there was a depression. Within the depression, there was a pitch-black scroll. Suyu's eyes brightened. What kind of treasure was a scroll that could not melt in such intense flames? Chapter 502. This was the first time Suyu had seen such a surprised expression on his face. Wei Kong was also overjoyed. Congratulations, uncle. Congratulations, uncle. You have finally found the mysterious heavenly crafting technique. Suddenly, the air behind them fluctuated. It was a stream of air that suddenly shot towards them, bringing with it a rather strong, killing intent. Lu Chuyi and Wei Kong were still in a state of excitement, not noticing the abnormality. Only Suyu was not as surprised as the other two. He immediately noticed the change in the stream of air. Turning his head, Suyu's expression turned cold. The stream of air was exposed, changing its direction midway, sprinting toward the tunnel. Trying to escape? Suyu grunted, the 9 yin yang formation flying out. Whoosh, whoosh, The sound of the air being torn apart could be heard. The 9 yin-yang formation was activated, enveloping the escaping shadow. Scram! With a cold snort, a majestic wave of genuine chi swept out, sweeping away the 9 yin-yang formation on the spot. From the void, a hand reached out and grabbed a steel needle that was shooting toward him. The hand exerted strength in its 5 fingers, and with a crack, the steel needle, which was a mid-grade divine artifact, actually broke into pieces. The person who had been hiding in plain sight also revealed himself. It was not one person, but 2 people. They wore black armor, their clothing identical. Their faces were resolute, their expressions cold, and they exuded a strong, killing intent. One of them had a full beard, the other had a fair complexion and was extremely feminine. At first glance, one would have thought they were women. The full-bearded man had a frightening cultivation level. From his aura, he did not lose to Cho Ziming. He was a half-fairy with a vital energy crystal. Even though the fair-skinned youth was slightly weaker, he was also a half-fairy with a vital energy crystal. The 2 of them were in different states. The fair-skinned youth was in a better state, but his aura was a little weak, and the armor on his body showed signs of melting. The full-bearded man's armor had a shocking scratch mark, as if it had been scratched by a ferocious, demonic beast. A large piece of flesh had been torn from his chest, leaving behind a long, bloody wound. If the claw had been any deeper, the full-bearded man would have been torn in half. The one who had shattered Su Yu's steel needle was the full-bearded man. The 2 people's faces were filled with shock and anxiety. After they appeared, they didn't stop and immediately turn around to flee towards the exit. Su Yu glanced at the damaged steel needle, and his heart ached. This was the only set of divine artifacts that he had, and it had been of great help to him. However, it had been destroyed just like that. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and lightning flashed around him. The 2 people who were running were hurriedly escaping up the passage. Suddenly, the bearded man's complexion changed. He forcefully changed his direction while running, and moved half a foot to the side. Just as he was about to move to the side, a golden dagger appeared out of thin air without any warning and spun towards his neck. Without hesitation, the burly man's true chi flashed and formed a protective true chi around his body. The golden dagger slashed through thin air, only brushing past his shoulder. It did not even break through his protective true chi. Seizing the opportunity, the bearded man snorted coldly and struck the spot where the dagger appeared. Poochie, but where the dagger appeared, a blue ball suddenly appeared and shot out a blue beam of light. His fist landed on it, but it bounced off in the air. Whoosh! With a flash of lightning, a figure stood on top of the blue ball. It was Su Yu. He blocked the narrow passage alone, looking down at the 2 people coldly. The bearded man looked at the blue ball in surprise, his eyes burning with passion. However, it was quickly replaced by a look of panic. He roared angrily, "Scram! Don't block the way!" Creak! But at that moment, the 5-ball surrounded Su Yu's body, releasing a 5-colored beam of light that completely blocked the narrow passage. The bearded man's expression darkened. A layer of golden scales appeared on his huge arm, and he threw a punch. Rumble! With a dull thud, the 5-colored beam of light trembled slightly. When the dry cloud 5 elemental formation was activated, could block an attack from a divine master. Even though Su Yu only had spirit energy and could only use 1/10 of its power, this was the first time it had been shaken by someone below the fairy realm. But it was only shaken. The bearded man was taken aback. A glint flashed across his eyes. "What do you mean by blocking our way?" Su Yu gripped the destroyed steel needle, his expression cold. "You failed to kill us and destroy my treasure. Why do you think I'm blocking your way?" The expression of the fair-skinned man sank. "It looks like you are an outsider. If you know what's good for you, make way. Otherwise, there will be no place for you in the mysterious heavenly palace." The threat made Su Yu laugh coldly. "Now that things have come to this, do you still think you can leave this place alive?" Putting aside the fact that they were sneaking around the grounds of Legacy, just their murderous intent alone made it impossible for Su Yu to let them off. The bearded man's cheeks wriggled a little, as if he was suppressing his anger. "Little brother, I attacked in a moment of desperation just now. It was a misunderstanding. I hope little brother can forgive the past and make way for me." But before Su Yu could reply, a fragrant wind assaulted them. It was Lu Chuyi, holding a golden leaf in her hand, blocking their path of retreat. She had a suspicious expression. "Oh, guards of the mysterious heavenly palace? You did not stand guard outside, but entered the grounds of legacy to steal the legacy of craftsmanship? If I remember correctly, of the 5 great inheritances, apart from the pills and materials that you guardians can take for your own use, the other 3 great inheritances do not allow you to touch the slightest bit. Now, you're stealing the inheritance of weapon forging. How audacious of you!" Hearing this, the bearded man's calm face was slightly shocked. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. "What we do is none of your business. Since you have discovered the secret scroll of the mysterious heavenly craftsmanship, we have no intention of fighting for it. Release the pillar of light, and we will go our separate ways. We owe each other nothing." But he had just finished speaking when Su Yu let out a cold laugh. "What a joke. Do you think we are fools? The mysterious heavenly craftsmanship has clearly appeared, but the 2 of you did not retrieve it. Instead, you hid in the shadows. This means that there is something wrong with the book. To think that you would try to trick us into taking the risk to retrieve the book." Having been exposed, the bearded man's eyes glowed. His figure suddenly flashed, turning to attack Lu Chuyi. At the same time, he let out a low grunt. "Go and capture that one. Make them hesitate." The fair-skinned and effeminate young man's cold and gloomy gaze immediately swept over to Wei Kong. Wei Kong was only a strong martial artist at the level of Xueling. The spirit energy crystal in his body had not yet turned into a vital energy crystal. On the other hand, the fair-skinned youth was already a half-fairy with a vital energy crystal. A vicious expression flashed past his eyes. The fair-skinned youth's figure flashed, his palms spitting out 2 rays of black light. The stench of blood filled the air. Anyone who inhaled a little would feel dizzy. Poison. Chapter 503. With a wave of his big sleeves, Wei Kang's body was surrounded by a gust of air, blowing away the poisonous fog that filled the sky. At the same time, a layer of protective spiritual light appeared on the surface of his body, his palms summoning a wooden club covered in rings. The wooden club released waves of spiritual pressure. It was a pretty good high-grade divine artifact. With a fierce wave of his palm, the many rings on the wooden club let out a clear and melodious clashing sound. It was abnormally beautiful. Su Yu suddenly became absent-minded, losing his focus for a moment. If he was in such a state, the fair and feminine youth in the middle of the battlefield who was facing the item was even more so. The other party's eyes turned sluggish, unable to move at all. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Wei Kong let out a cold laugh, stepping forward and ruthlessly attacking the other party's head. "Half-fairy is only SOSO." Wei Kong let out a disdainful laugh. He had complete control of a high-grade divine artifact, and the power he could unleash was comparable to a strong martial artist of half-fairy. However, with a poochie sound, the fair-skinned and effeminate young man's figure actually shattered inch by inch under the club's attack, turning into a dark green mist. The fog enveloped Wei Kong in an instant. The protective spiritual energy on the surface of his body was not only unable to block it, but instead fused with the green fog. Moreover, under Wei Kang's panicked gaze, the green air current formed by the fusion of the spiritual energy and the green fog entered Wei Kang's body. At once, Wei Kang's face turned green, quickly turning pale, then a deep purple color. This was accompanied by the continuous cries of pain coming from his mouth. The wooden club in his hand loosened involuntarily, falling to the ground. But while it was still in the air, it was easily caught by a pale palm. From a transparent ripple, the fair and feminine youth's figure walked out. Previously, they had relied on this concealment technique to kill them. No matter how weak a half-fairy is, he is still stronger than trash like you. You have a treasure like a high-grade divine artifact, but your combat experience is only at the level of sparring. Do you still think this is your faction? The fair and feminine youth laughed in disdain, stepping on Wei Kang's face, leaving a black footprint. Wei Kang's face turned red, his eyes wide with anger and humiliation. But the poison in his body was acting up, and he could not retaliate. Right at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly fell from the sky, 3 feet in front of the fair-skinned and effeminate youth, and a pair of fists blasted out from within. Not only was the fair-skinned and feminine young man not surprised, he even sneered as if he had known this would happen. Same old trick. He was already prepared. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of red liquid. The liquid was filled with extremely potent poison. Layers of faint black void cracks appeared in the surrounding air. Even space had been corroded by the deadly poison, let alone Su Yu. Enjoy it. The Blood-Sea Jade-Dew liquid is a one-hit kill. I left it for you. The fair-skinned and effeminate young man laughed mockingly. If he wanted to escape this place successfully, the biggest obstacle wasn't that mysterious woman, but this brat who possessed such a powerful array. Therefore, he had already set up a trap. He purposely revealed a flaw when he was defeating Wei Kang and lured him to attack. Then he would spit out the Blood-Sea Jade-Dew liquid that he had been brewing for a long time. Before Wei Kang could use the formation, he would kill him with one strike. Observing this scene from afar, the bearded man could not help but laugh. Well done. However, the expressions on their faces froze in an instant. The 2 fists that he had thrown out were also prepared. His hands suddenly grabbed forward. Within the 2 palms, there were 2 lumps of 5-colored thunderbolts. With a creak, the lump of red liquid was caught in the palms and was enveloped by the thunderbolts. Under the restriction of the thunderbolts, the liquid let out a sizzling sound and emitted a blood-red fog continuously. The bearded man, who was far away, was shocked. Disastrous thunder. Thunderbolts naturally had an extremely strong restraining effect against evil and poisonous things. Furthermore, what this brat had used was disastrous thunder, a thunderbolt that contained the will of the universe. How could the poisonous liquid escape from it? The fair-skinned and feminine young man was shocked. His heart turned cold, and he retreated without any explanation. However, just as he was retreating, 5 balls flew out from the thunderbolts in front of him. With a whistle in the sky, they headed toward the fair-skinned and feminine young man. The fair-skinned and feminine young man's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he threw a talisman into the sky. The talisman exploded on the spot, unleashing the attack of a strong martial artist with a full vital energy crystal. A dark blue ball of light turned into a sharp arrow and shot toward the sky. It wanted to block the dry cloud 5 elemental formation and buy time for the fair-skinned and feminine young man to escape. However, the dry cloud 5 elemental formation ignored the so-called sharp arrow. It directly pressed down, crushing the sharp arrow and sealing the fair-skinned and feminine young man within it. At the same time, the 5 light pillars gathered abruptly, sealing the fair-skinned and feminine young man so that he could not move. Creak! At this moment, Su Yu's figure walked out from the 5 light pillars. He took a step forward and pressed his palm on the fair-skinned and feminine young man's head. The Blood-Sea Jade-Dew liquid that was enveloped by the thunderbolts was slapped into his mouth. Ah! With a pathetic shriek, the fair-skinned and feminine young man's body suddenly shot out streams of blood from his pores. Following that, his entire body festered and melted, leaving behind a pool of black blood on the ground. A strong martial artist of half-fairy had been poisoned to death and turned into minced meat. Even if he is a half-fairy, he does not seem to be much. Su Yu weaved signs with one hand, and the dry cloud 5 elemental formation returned to his body. As he passed by Wei Kang, he pulled him up expressionlessly. Wei Kang's eyes glowed intensely. When he was pulled up by Su Yu, his body trembled violently. Too powerful, unimaginably powerful. From the moment he attacked to the moment he killed his opponent with poison, it had only been a few breaths' time. It was as if he had pushed his opponent to the point of killing him with poison. Su Yu's ferocious attack had shocked Wei Kang greatly. In his mind, Su Yu was merely a strong martial artist of a human king level. He could not understand why Lu Chuyi had asked him for help previously. At this moment, he finally understood Lu Chuyi's intentions. How was he a human king? He was clearly a ridiculously powerful monster. After settling the matter, Suyu swept his cold gaze toward the full-bearded man. The full-bearded man felt a chill run down his spine when he was stared at by Suyu, his face filled with fear. Lu Chuyi, who was fighting him, let out a cold grunt. You dare to be distracted while fighting? You are asking for death. With a slap of her palm, a lump of spirit energy exploded, bombarding the full-bearded man's chest. At that moment, the armor, which had already cracked open, shattered into pieces. The ghastly wound on his chest became even clearer. Wait, don't kill me. The full-bearded man spoke quickly, his gaze fixed on the lava lake, his eyes filled with anxiety. Listen to me, he said. Don't worry about anything now. Escape immediately. This is not the legacy of the mysterious heavenly crafting technique. It is a blood sacrifice. His voice came to an abrupt halt, as his figure had disappeared into thin air. But what followed was the sound of lava boiling. Everyone turned to look, just in time to see the full-bearded man being dragged into the lava lake, one of his legs exposed. Suyu's pupils dilated. He had only seen a lump of fiery red light. Then the full-bearded man had disappeared. What kind of frightening speed was that? The only person present who could see clearly was Lu Chuyi. Her expression had already turned extremely ugly. Without thinking, she grabbed Wei Kong with one hand and Suyu with the other, activating the golden leaf in her palm to escape 1,000 miles in one step. Her expression was ugly. It's the fairy realm, ferocious beast king. It is hiding within the lava. Let's escape quickly. Chapter 504. No matter how fast the red shadow that had swept away the full-bearded man was, how could it avoid the eyes of an almighty divine master? Lu Chuyi grabbed the two of them, activating her golden leaf and preparing to escape 1,000 miles in one step. But with a flash of the red light, a blurry afterimage struck Lu Chuyi's back. If it had been the Lu Chuyi of the past, with the physical body of an almighty divine master, the attacks of a normal fairy realm would have been useless. But she was heavily injured, and she had not been able to defeat the full-bearded man for a long time. How could she withstand the attack of a fairy realm? She could only temporarily give up on 1,000 miles in one step, shifting her shoulder to the side and shifting 20 feet to the left. A bright and scalding red cloth brushed past Lu Chuyi's shoulder. The scorching heat ignited Lu Chuyi's dress on the spot. The vital energy on the surface of Lu Chuyi's body pulsed, extinguishing the flames. Her dress had been slightly burned, revealing her slightly red skin under the scorch. A burning pain caused Lu Chuyi to suck in a breath of cold air. To think that an almighty divine master would personally descend upon the mysterious, heavenly divine pavilion. A mocking laugh came from within the black lava, as if mocking the almighty divine master for limiting his cultivation level and suffering defeat in front of a ferocious beast of the fairy realm. Under the gazes of the three of them, the black lava tumbled, and a black object that was around 100 feet in size slowly floated out of it. At first glance, one would have thought that it was a giant rock, but upon closer inspection, one would realize that beneath the black lava was a pair of huge, pale eyes the size of a human head. Compared to its 10-foot-long body, the eyes were extremely small. A frog? Suyu was stunned. The stone-like monster in front of him was a frog. It's not a frog, it's a white-eyed fireglass frog. A king of ferocious beasts at the early stage of the fairy realm. It has the bloodline of an immortal spirit and is born with high-quality, raging flames. It is a spiritual pet favored by elixir masters, but it has long been lost in the outside world. To think that there would be one here. Lu Chuyi's tone was serious. It was obvious that she was having a hard time dealing with this beast. The pale eyes of the white-eyed fireglass frog glowed with a cunning light. To think that someone would recognize me. You're better than those 9 idiots who stole what they were guarding. 9. In that case, the guards of the heavenly palace who were waiting here were not only the bearded man and the effeminate young man, but also others. However, from the looks of it now, They had all been buried in the stomach of the white-eyed fire-glass frog, becoming a delicious meal for it. As it spoke, the white-eyed fire-glass frog extended its long tongue and curled it around the stone tablet in the middle of the flames. The surface of the black scroll flickered with black light and revealed its original appearance. It was an extremely petite emerald green frog the size of a palm. The larva of the white-eyed fire-glass frog? Lu Chuyi's face darkened. Is it the heaven-grade secret scroll of craftsmanship that it pretended to be? So, this place isn't the heavenly secrets crafting inheritance? Before the bearded man died, he had said that this place was not the land of inheritance, but a blood sacrifice. Not bad. Are you disappointed? The white-eyed fire-glass frog sneered. At this point, Lu Chuyi's efforts were completely wasted. She slowly closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before opening them. Her eyes were cold. You want to keep us here? The white-eyed fire-glass frog had a faint smile. Even though the flesh of those 9 idiots is enough to complete the blood sacrifice, if I can swallow an almighty divine master of the human race, I might be able to complete a mutation for my race, breaking through the shackles and breaking through to the middle stage of the fairy realm. Lu Chuyi's expression turned cold. You are dreaming. The white-eyed fire-glass frog did not retort. Instead, it let out a cold laugh, opening its mouth abruptly and shooting out its long, scarlet tongue. The long tongue swept past, as if it wanted to swallow all 3 of them in one breath. Attack! Lu Chuyi let out a low grunt. With the frog's abilities, they had no hope of escaping. They could only take the risk and fight. Suyu's heart trembled. This was a true fairy realm. Suyu took a light breath, not daring to be careless. Without hesitation, he immediately released the dry cloud 5 elemental formation, enveloping the 3 of them. Within the formation, Suyu could relax a little. The dry cloud 5 elemental formation had not shown any signs of breaking under the full activation of Suyu's hands. At most, it only shook violently. Wei Kong, who was at the side, heaved a sigh of relief. Having personally witnessed the power of the formation, he felt safe. Only Lu Chuyi had a serious expression. Attack with all your might, don't hold back. With a creak, a golden bamboo fell from her sleeve. It was the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. The white-eyed fire-glass frog froze, who was laughing coldly, then revealed a shocked expression. Could this be the number 1 divine bamboo of Jiuzhou, the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? Didn't this plant go extinct many years ago? To think that you still have one. How unbelievable. But Lu Chuyi ignored him, concentrating on imbuing vital energy into the treasure, forcefully activating it. Worry flashed in Suyu's eyes. She had already forcefully activated it multiple times. If she used it again, her injuries, which had yet to recover, would only worsen. But at the moment of life and death, she was fighting with her life on the line. Suyu naturally would not hold back. With a thought, Suyu sat down cross-legged. A dim light glowed from the top of his head, and his soul left his body. Wei Kong did not sense anything, but he did not understand why Suyu was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Lu Chuyi's eyelids twitched. His soul had left his body. His face was expressionless, but his heart was filled with raging waves. Only almighty divine masters could leave their bodies. Because it involved the soul, almighty divine masters had to take many protective measures to allow their souls to leave their bodies, and they could not maintain it for too long. But Suyu had easily left his body, and he looked very familiar with it. She was extremely shocked. She had never heard a secret technique that could allow the souls of fighters below the level of divine master to leave their bodies. Suddenly, Lu Chuyi felt that the Suyu in front of her was a little unfamiliar, giving her a feeling that he was unfathomable. She was an almighty divine master, and she was several levels higher than Suyu. In the past, she wouldn't even spare a glance at a junior at Suyu's level. But now, she was sighing with emotion. Putting away the shock in her heart, she used up all the vital energy in her body, finally activating the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. With a light flick of her wrist, a golden ray of light cut through the sky, slashing toward Suyu. That unstoppable momentum seemed to want to cut everything into nothingness. And Su Yu's soul had already arrived within 30 feet of his opponent. He attacked with his soul, ruthlessly attacking his opponent's soul. Chapter 505. The white-eyed fire glass frog's body trembled slightly, and the black magma beneath it shook. A wall of black lava rose from the table and blocked the golden light that streaked across the sky. With a crack, the magma wall split into two. But the black flames within the magma were terrifyingly high, destroying more than half of the golden light. When it broke through the magma and struck the white-eyed fireglass frog, its power was less than 30% of its peak. The white-eyed fireglass frog did not even try to dodge. The weak golden light left behind a string of sparks on its skin, which had been exposed to flames for a long time. The strongest attack that Lu Chuyi could unleash in this world had been broken so easily. But even though her attack had failed, she still had Su Yu's soul attack. Lu Chuyi did not bat an eyelid as she shot a quick glance at the approaching white-eyed fireglass frog. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anticipation as she gripped the heavenly orchid silver bamboo tightly. Once the frog was injured on a soul level, she would strike again to kill it. At the same time, Su Yu's soul body did not fear the magma wall, attacking the soul of the white-eyed fireglass frog. The high temperature of the frog's body did not have any effect on the soul-level attack. It looked like the attack was about to succeed, but the white-eyed fireglass frog, which had clearly not discovered the existence of Su Yu's soul body, suddenly revealed a playful expression as it stared coldly at Su Yu's soul body. It could actually discover Su Yu's soul body. Even though Su Yu was in the midst of his attack, he was observing his surroundings closely. Noticing the subtle change in the frog's expression, his heart skipped a beat. He knew that things were not looking good, so he immediately gave up on his attack and retreated. As he retreated, the white-eyed fireglass frog let out a cold laugh. Thinking of leaving now? It's too late. At that moment, the soul of the white-eyed fireglass frog emitted a layer of gray flames. Yes, gray flames. Soul-level flames. It was as if Su Yu had merged a thread of thunderbolt into his soul, successfully cultivating the great Thunderheart technique. But that thread of soul thunderbolt paled in comparison to the raging flames of nothingness in front of him. There was only one thread of soul thunderbolt, but there were tens of thousands of threads of these raging flames. The power of these raging flames would burn even the soul of the fairy realm to ashes, much less someone at the immortal realm like Su Yu. Have a taste of the void raging flames this king has cultivated for many years. After cultivating for over 100 years, I finally succeeded. The white-eyed fireglass frog gave a cold hum, and gray flames quickly spread out from its soul, pouncing toward Su Yu. As soon as the void flame appeared, Su Yu's soul felt an intense burning pain, and his soul even showed signs of trembling. In the distance, Lu Chuyi's expression changed drastically. Run. Your soul isn't condensed enough. You'll be burned by the soul fire at any time. Her beautiful eyes shrunk to the size of a needle, and her heart fell to the bottom. Die. My raging flames of nothingness have killed fairy realm beings before. You can die without regrets under my raging flames of nothingness. The white-eyed fireglass frog gave a stern shout and activated the raging flames of nothingness to envelop Su Yu, who was retreating. In his eyes, Su Yu, whose soul could leave his body, was obviously more dangerous than Lu Chuyi. He had to kill him as soon as possible. Even though Su Yu's reaction was fast, the white-eyed fireglass frog was extremely cunning. It pretended not to know and waited for Su Yu to fall into its trap. How could Su Yu escape such a sure kill attack? The raging flames of nothingness enveloped Su Yu completely. In the blink of an eye, his soul became a burning man. Lu Chuyi's pupils shrunk to the size of a needle. She could not accept the fact that Su Yu's soul was being burned by the raging flames. In his heart, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of sadness. It was obvious that she hadn't known Su Yu for a long time, but he had left a deep impression in her heart at some point in time. Many years later, She would not forget that she had met a youth who had saved her in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. She looked toward the white-eyed fireglass frog, her beautiful eyes filled with murderous intent. But at that moment, the white-eyed fireglass frog's expression turned rigid, and it shouted, "Impossible! How could this be?" Large amounts of gray flames were surging out of its soul. It was the raging flames of nothingness. The raging flames of nothingness were flowing out of its body uncontrollably, gathering toward Su Yu's body. The white-eyed fireglass frog roared furiously, but it could not stop the raging flames of nothingness from flowing out. In just a few breaths' time, the raging flames of nothingness in its body were only a few weak shreds. On the other hand, the raging flames of nothingness on Su Yu's body were 3 zhang tall, and within the raging flames, a faintly discernible soul was not only safe and sound, but it was also coldly looking at the white-eyed fireglass frog. If they had transparent eyes, they would have noticed that within Su Yu's soul, there was a small cauldron with 9 dragons continuously absorbing the raging flames of nothingness, causing the flames to surround the small cauldron. Hence, the raging flames of nothingness did not harm Su Yu in the slightest. Very quickly, a whooshing sound could be heard from the soul level. The soul flames that the white-eyed fireglass frog had cultivated for countless years had been completely snatched away by Su Yu. The white-eyed fireglass frog's eyes were wide open in anger, unable to accept this reality. It had been submerged in black lava for a long time, which allowed it to merge with the flames in its soul bit by bit, forming a raging flame that specialized in attacking souls. But in just a few breaths' time, the fruits of its 100 years of cultivation had been snatched away by Su Yu. This caused the white-eyed fireglass frog to be extremely furious, its eyes spitting black flames. "Die!" The white-eyed fireglass frog opened its mouth and extended its long tongue once again. But this time, the long tongue was covered in black, raging flames. The raging flames were even more frightening than the temperature emitted by the lava. Once it appeared, the spirit energy within a radius of 1,000 feet was ignited on the spot, and the surroundings became a sea of fire in an instant. This was extremely similar to the purple sun incredible umbrella. The only difference was that the power of the flames contained within the purple sun incredible umbrella was not even 1/10 of the black raging flames. Both of them were flames that were higher than the origin, but they were not at the same level. Su Yu's soul quickly returned to his body. The moment he opened his eyes, he weaved signs with one hand, and the eternal stone king armor covered his body. At that moment, the long tongue, which was burning with black, raging flames, swept toward him. Creak! The 5-colored light pillar shook violently at once. The attack of the long tongue was a true attack of the fairy realm, but did not blast the 5-colored light pillar away, causing Su Yu to heave a long sigh of relief. But a small piece of the raging flames on the long tongue landed on the light pillar. Creak! The light pillar was instantly melted. The corresponding round ball let out a whimper and immediately dimmed. The other 4 light pillars were melted one after another. They did not even have the chance to resist and were melted by the black flames. Chapter 506. The terror of the black flames had far exceeded their expectations. The 5-colored light beam shattered, and the spreading black flames had no more resistance. They engulfed Su Yu and the other 2. The terrifying heat that had suddenly descended instantly put Su Yu in a life-threatening situation. The eternal stone king armor on the surface of his body emitted waves of black air. It was the ghost energy stored within the armor. Because the armor had suffered irresistible damage, the ghost energy gushed out on its own. Wei Kong did not even have time to react. The protective spirit energy that he had gathered in a hurry melted on the spot. His body was immediately ignited by the high temperature, turning him into a flaming man. As he roared, he used his spirit energy to extinguish the flames. But once the spirit energy gushed out, it immediately turned into an even more ferocious flame. Seeing that Wei Kong was about to be burned to ashes, The golden leaf in Lu Qi's palm rotated, becoming 3 zhong wide and forming a leaf-shaped shield. The black flames landed on the shield, but were deflected, unable to burn it in the slightest. A moment later, the black flames extinguished on their own. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Lu Qi waved her sleeves, sending out a gust of wind to extinguish the flames on Wei Kang's body. His clothes had been burned to the point where they barely covered his body. Many parts of his skin were burned, and his flesh was a mess. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, grimacing in pain. If he had been a moment later, he would have been burned alive, and this was caused by the high temperature of the black flames. If the black flames had landed directly on his body, he would have been turned to ashes on the spot. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. While he was shocked by the terrifying power of the black flames, he looked at the golden leaf with even more surprise. The number 1 divine bamboo of Jiuzhou was indeed extraordinary. If he had a weapon or armor made from this treasure, wouldn't it be indestructible? The white-eyed fire-glass doll revealed a look of fear. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo had an obvious suppressive effect on its flames. But immediately after, its eyes glowed with mockery. It should be acting up soon. Hearing this, Suyu felt that something was wrong. At that moment, Lu Qi suddenly let out a light grunt, her petite body trembling. The golden leaf in her hand flickered with a golden light, showing signs of being unable to maintain it. Her beautiful and dignified face had unknowingly become flushed and extremely hot. Her eyes were filled with endless pain. It was as if her whole body was about to be burned. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that on his right arm, there was a scalding wound left behind by the long tongue. At this moment, it was incomparably dark red. Traces of dark red light were flowing throughout his body, igniting the insides of his body. Fire poison. Lu Chu's teeth chattered. The moment she opened her mouth, she spat out a scorching flame. That dark red flowing light was the fire poison. In the black lava, there were many toxins that even fire could not melt. The white-eyed fire-glass doll had been cultivating in the lava for a long time, and its body had long carried these fire toxins. Although the black flames were powerful, the fire poison could kill people invisibly, which was even more terrifying. Lu Qi felt as if all her internal organs were on fire, and the pain was unbearable. The spiritual energy in her body grew crazily like weeds when it came into contact with the fire poison, which helped the fire poison spread. Only true Qi could suppress it. However, after a series of battles, there wasn't much true Qi left in him, and he could only barely stop the fire poison from spreading further. Without the support of Jinqi, the golden leaf fell to the ground with a clang. Lu Qi's body swayed, and she stumbled, about to fall. Suyu extended his palm, grabbing her by the waist and gently placing her on the ground. "Leave the rest to me." The fire poison was extremely overbearing. Not only did it burn her body, it even affected her soul, causing Lu Qi's consciousness to gradually become blurry. With Suyu's transparent eye, he could see that the fire poison was gathering toward her heart. Once her heart was infected by the fire poison, her life would be in danger. He had to quickly help her expel the fire poison. Before that happened, the ferocious Beast King of the fairy realm wanted to end the battle quickly. His eyes flashed with determination. It was time to use that item. With a thought, Suyu's fingertip glowed with a dark light. A shocking sword energy that could destroy the heavens rumbled. There was also the roar of thunder, the light illuminating the world. The sound of thunder was deafening, reverberating for thousands of miles. The entire underground lava churned endlessly, rising to a height of 100 zhong. The underground space trembled continuously, the hot rocks falling from above, as if the entire place was about to collapse. The entire mountain peak, which pierced through the clouds, even trembled violently. The earth-shaking roar of thunder came from within the mountain, sweeping in all directions. Within one of the mountains, the purple-robed Bai Qi was thinking about something when he suddenly heard a heaven-shaking, thunderous roar. He was caught off guard, and his body trembled. A deep sense of fear appeared in his eyes. This is the disastrous thunder. Within the 5 mountains, there was a disastrous thunder that appeared and disappeared mysteriously. It had a strong restraining effect on him, a ghostly being. Could it be that disastrous thunder had appeared? Bai Chi's eyes flickered as he sped in the direction of the sound. On another mountain peak, Ming Fei was searching with a few people in a land of legacy. But there was nothing left of the legacy, as it had been taken by someone else. The secret room of the technique legacy has already been taken by someone else. Ming Fei creased her brows. The traces are very old, taken away by someone a long time ago. But this is good too. It saves me the trouble of activating the blood sacrifice. After muttering to herself, Ming Fei turned to instruct the 3 people from the ancient clan. In the other 4 mountains, there are the elixirs, enlightenment, materials, and craftsmanship legacies. The 3 of you go investigate immediately. Report to me which legacies have not been opened yet. Shijie and the rest bowed in acknowledgement. Their abilities were average, but they were more than enough for scouting missions. They had just left when a thunderous roar of thunder reverberated, causing Ming Fei's expression to change. The powerful thunderbolt caused the ghostly energy in her body to stir. Cosmos Thunder Sword? How could it be here? Could that detestable blood-haired brat have also entered the 5 mountains? As a heavenly ghost in the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, she was more familiar with the Cosmos Thunder Sword than anyone else. That was a thunderbolt sword of extreme yang. Its restraining effect on ghostly beings was unimaginable. Even though her brain injuries had mostly recovered, Shanggu was not confident that she would be able to completely block that sword. Her expression flickered for a while before Shanggu grunted. Brat, when the vital energy crystals in your body are used up, it will be time for me to settle the score with you. In the other 3 mountains, the 7 Lords of Darkness were in a mysterious place. Their surroundings were pitch black. In Lord Yu's hands was a scroll that was emitting a fluorescent light. The 6 of them, including Bai Luo, surrounded Lord Yu and continued to cast spells. They seemed to be preparing for some kind of ceremony. All of a sudden, a heaven-shaking thunderbolt descended. The 6 of them opened their eyes at the same time, their eyes filled with shock. Bai Luo's eyes flashed, his pupils filled with fear. Could this be the legendary disastrous thunder? Lord Yu revealed a doubtful expression. She shook her head. Perhaps. Let's hurry up and start setting up the heaven sacrifice. Hearing this, Bai Luo looked at Lord Yu in the dark, silently casting spells without batting an eyelid. Outside the 5 mountains, a silver puppet was hurrying over. It heard the sound of thunder from tens of thousands of miles away. The silver puppet froze for a moment, then let out a cold laugh. Is this the disastrous thunder left behind by the Thunder Emperor? Perfect. I will accept it along with the 5 great legacies. In the underground magma space, the sudden explosion of thunder was deafening, bringing with it an earth-shattering sound that spread in all directions. Wei Kong, who was in front of the puppet, was caught off guard, letting out a pathetic cry. He, who was just 1 step away from becoming a half-fairy, felt his ears fill with blood, fainting on the spot. Within the magma, the white-eyed fire glass doll's playful expression froze. Clang, clang. A 3-foot-long sword of lightning suddenly appeared in Su Yu's palm. The long sword was surrounded by lightning, releasing a shocking, majestic aura. The Cosmos Thunder Sword was Su Yu's trump card to save his life. He had been wary of Shanggu. Hence, he had not been willing to use it despite the many times he had been in danger. But time waited for no one. As the last remaining vital energy crystal in Su Yu's dantian shattered, the majestic vital energy within surged out, crazily entering the Cosmos Thunder Sword. At that moment, the Cosmos Thunder Sword in Su Yu's palm expanded continuously, becoming 1,000 feet long in an instant. The white-eyed fire glass doll's eyes were filled with shock, letting out a strange cry. Wait, human, don't attack first. It felt the threat of death from this sword. Su Yu was unmoved. He injected the last bit of vital energy into the sword, activating the Cosmos Thunder Sword to its maximum. The terrifying lightning and the shocking destructive aura had already surpassed the threshold of the fairy realm. Don't you want the legacy of mysterious heavenly craftsmanship? I'm the only one who knows where it is. The wide-eyed fire-glass frog saw that Suyu had no intention of compromising and said anxiously. Suyu's cold gaze replied, "There's no need." With a flick of his wrist, the 1,000-foot-long sword of lightning left an afterimage in the air, slicing down with the rumbling sound of thunder. The wide-eyed fire-glass frog was shocked. It kicked its legs, its huge body diving into the depths of the magma pool. But the moment it entered, the lightning had already struck. Chapter 507. With a creak, a peerless sword light flickered, as if the heavens and earth were being split apart. The lava pool, which had been settled for 100 years, was split apart by the sword. Lava erupted, flames rolling. A sword mark that went all the way to the bottom destroyed the entire pool. With a pathetic cry, the fairy realm ferocious beast king's huge body was split into two by the peerless sword light. The fairy realm had fallen just like that. The power of the sword had already surpassed the fairy realm, surpassing the threshold of this world. As expected, he was about to be transported out. Suddenly, a wave of space energy surged, enveloping Suyu and about to transport him out. Suyu laughed at himself. It's over in the end. Looking at the unconscious Lu Chui, Suyu sighed helplessly. I've let you down. I hope that you can obtain the legacy that you want. Suyu remembered this woman's determination. She was willing to give up her life to come here. He hoped that she would get what she wanted. Slowly closing his eyes, Suyu had accepted his fate. However, at this moment, a glowing scroll flew out of his space ring on its own. Sensing that something was amiss, Suyu opened his eyes to take a look. He was stunned for a moment before recognizing the origin of the scroll. Back then, he had been swallowed into the body of the Ghost King by Qi and had only managed to escape after a few days. When he left, he had discovered a glowing scroll. It looked like a map. After keeping it, he had forgotten about it. If not for the fact that it had suddenly appeared, Suyu would have forgotten about it. Once the scroll appeared, it gave off a glowing glow. The glow was very gentle, and it contained an aura similar to that of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. The space energy that enveloped Suyu slowly retreated after some struggle and hesitation. Suyu, who was about to be transported out, once again stood firmly in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. This unexpected and magical scene caused Suyu to be shocked. At the same time, he could not hide his joy. When he had used the Cosmos Thunder Sword, he had already been prepared to be transported out. To think that with this scroll in hand, he could seemingly ignore the space transportation of this place. Suyu's gaze flickered, his lips revealing a hint of excitement. Opening the scroll again, he found that it was still an incomplete map. The area described was also very unfamiliar, but he was certain that it was not the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Heavenly secret map? At that moment, Suyu discovered a line of tiny words on the map that he had previously overlooked. There were 3 words carefully carved on it. Mysterious heavenly map? What is that? Suyu was a little confused. However, there was no doubt that the map was extremely valuable. The Ghost King was most likely an unimaginable existence when he was alive. How could the heavenly fate diagram in his body be ordinary? After thinking about it, Suyu carefully put it away. After doing all this, Suyu finally had the time to examine the white-eyed fire-glass frog that he had killed. Its corpse had been split into 2 and was floating on the lava. After the lava was slashed by the Cosmos Thunder Sword, for some reason, its temperature rapidly dropped. The layers of black flames seemed to be devoured by something and gradually disappeared. After confirming that the temperature within the lava was no longer high, Suyu leaped onto the stone tablet. With a twist of his hands, he grabbed the 2 halves of the white-eyed fire-glass frog's corpse onto the shore. After all, the corporeal body of a fairy realm expert was still a treasure, and Suyu would naturally not miss it. As a green light flickered on his arm, it was absorbed into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. At that moment, Suyu saw something moving above the lava from the corner of his eyes. His gaze swept over like lightning, and he coincidentally discovered a green frog that was struggling with its two frog legs, drilling into the lava. Its movements were clumsy, and it looked charmingly naive. The larvae of the white-eyed fire-glass frog? Suyu was surprised. He flew over, and with a suction force, he grabbed the frog in his palm. Sensing danger, it struggled with all its might. Its mouth croaked, and it spat out flames that were not weak. Its power was no weaker than the flames within the purple sun incredible umbrella. Suyu clicked his tongue in wonder. As expected of a spiritual species of the universe, its larvae already possessed flames that surpassed the origin. When it matured, it would be as difficult to deal with as the giant white-eyed fire-glass frog. Just as Suyu was about to throw it into the 9-jade spiritual pearl, the struggling larvae suddenly spat out a golden key the size of a pinky finger. Suyu was slightly surprised, and he grabbed the golden key. The key was extremely agile. It was like a small snake, struggling continuously, as if it wanted to fly into the lava. Suyu's eyes flashed, and he threw the small white-eyed fire-glass frog into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He grabbed the golden key, and he dove into the lava, following the direction that the key had sensed. The lava was cooling quickly, and it had started to turn from liquid to solid. Hence, it was difficult to dive. Suyu had no choice but to use the 9 yin-yang formation to open up a path, hacking wildly along the way. After a few breaths, Suyu entered the bottom of the pool, following the direction that the key had sensed. He saw that there was a black box embedded in the ground deep within the pool. Suyu had a delighted expression. How scary was the black lava? Suyu had experienced the power of the black flames that the white-eyed fire-glass frog had cultivated. But under the flames, the black box was brand new, and it was definitely not an ordinary item. Hence, the treasure sealed within was definitely not an ordinary item. Suyu released his palm, and the small golden key in his palm flew out like a small fish, entering the hole in the box. With a creak, the black box opened automatically. Suyu cautiously retreated a little. At that moment, the black box opened, spitting out a bolt of black flames, causing the surrounding temperature to rise abruptly. Luckily, the black flames were the remnants of the black box. They were extremely weak and quickly disappeared. Suyu was secretly glad that he had been cautious. If he had been killed by the black flames due to his carelessness, it would have been too humiliating. He had survived a great calamity, but he had fallen in front of the treasure. What a joke! When the flames dissipated, the black box was completely open. A black book and a black painting lay quietly within. Mysterious heavenly crafting technique? There were a few large words printed on the black book. Wasn't this the secret crafting technique that Lu Chuyi had painstakingly searched for? Suyu's eyes heated up, and he grabbed the book in his palm. How nature-defying was a secret technique that could tempt even an almighty divine master. He could not miss out on this item. At the same time, Suyu also grabbed the painting in his palm. The painting was in the state of a scroll, requiring vital energy to open. Even when Suyu forcefully imbued it with spirit energy, there was no reaction at all. However, a sliver of black flames leaked out from the painting, causing Suyu's eyelids to twitch. He almost threw the painting away. Why would there be black flames in the painting? Thinking about how the flames within the black lava had all disappeared, Suyu could confirm that the black flames had most likely leaked out from the painting. That strike just now had triggered some sort of seal, causing the black flames to return to the painting. Suyu's heart burned with passion. If he could use such a terrifying flame, how powerful would it be? The only pity was that this item required vital energy to be activated. As Suyu felt that it was such a pity, he flipped over the scroll and suddenly discovered a line of words at the back. Great Sun Punishment Fairy Picture, Fairy Level Technique. Please treat it well if you are fated. Fairy Level Technique. Suyu felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Fairy Level. A fairy level technique that was above the legendary level. Suyu gasped. The scroll was actually a fairy level cultivation technique. A technique that did not exist in the entire Jinlong continent. For a long time, Suyu could not calm the waves in his heart. This technique had given him too much of a shock. A legendary level technique was already shockingly powerful, much less a fairy level technique. A moment later, Suyu gradually regained his composure. His heart shuddered as he placed the scroll into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. This cultivation technique must not be leaked. After suppressing the waves in his heart and regaining his composure, Suyu scanned the surroundings. After confirming that he had not missed anything, he stood up and left. But before he left, he thought about it and took the black box with him. For this item to have existed in the black lava for so long, it must not be an ordinary item. What Suyu did not know was that after he left, a black liquid slowly flowed out from the indentations of the black box. Leaping ashore, Suyu stuffed the secret technique of crafting heavenly weapons into his robes, but did not hide it. Lu Chuyi had searched for this secret technique for a long time, so it was not a big deal for her to browse through it once. But suddenly, Suyu discovered that Lu Chuyi had awakened and was sitting cross-legged. Her previously flushed face had returned to normal. Her skin was rosy and smooth. Her breathing was even, and her breathing was steady. There were no signs of her being heavily injured. Scanning with his transparent eye, Suyu was surprised to discover that the fire poison in her body had been sealed by a cage formed by 9 golden leaves. Because of that, she was able to catch her breath. But the fire poison was unusually fierce. Under the impact of the fire poison, the golden leaf cage showed signs of instability. This lady did not have just one golden leaf. Suyu quickly understood. She was an almighty divine master, after all. It would be unthinkable for her to die so easily at the hands of a fairy realm frog. At this moment, she was lowering her head to check on Wei Kang's injuries. Realizing that he was unconscious, she creased her brows, a hint of anxiety on her face. Suddenly sensing movement behind her, she swept her cold gaze over and froze. Her gaze shifted, her expression relaxed. "Come here." Suyu walked over, his face filled with concern. "How are your injuries?" Lu Chuyi let out a bitter laugh. "I used a secret technique to temporarily seal the fire poison before I fainted. It looks like I'm fine now." "I am fine, but you have hidden your strength well." "I am fine, but you, on the other hand, have really hidden your strength well. Even now, you still have a trump card up your sleeve. The power of that sword is something that even an early-stage fairy would not be able to block. Moreover, even after using a technique that exceeds the power of a fairy, you're still able to remain in the mysterious heavenly palace unscathed." She still believed that Suyu was from the returning principal palace. Chapter 508. Lu Chuyi's heart couldn't help but thump when she saw this scene. She wondered if Suyu was going to attack her. Turning her gaze, Lu Chuyi said, "Do you have any other wishes that I can help you fulfill?" Her tone was strange, and her tone was complicated. "Wish?" Suyu felt that something was off, but he put the heavenly crafting secret technique back without batting an eyelid. "Wish?" Suyu thought. His wish was to restore Ling Xiaotian, but he had left Ling Xiaotian and the dragon-shaped coffin in the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds. Seeing Suyu pull his hand back, Lu Chuyi was slightly surprised. Had she been wrong? With suspicion, she said patiently, "Anything you want to do is fine. For example, enemies. In any case, I can help you fulfill all your wishes." Suyu was confused. What did Lu Chuyi mean? Thinking for a moment, Suyu's fingertip glowed, and the 9 yin-yang formation appeared. "I wish to repair it. It would be best if its power could be raised to another level." Lu Chuyi's expression was complicated, but she nodded without hesitation. "All right." Yanbai raised her hand and grabbed the damaged 9 yin-yang formation. At the same time, she flicked her slender finger, and a small bag appeared at her waist. It was Lu Chuyi's storage space, and the number of treasures in it was probably astronomical. At this moment, a golden light flickered. It was some broken golden shards floating in the air. The shards were of different sizes, the smaller ones the size of words, the bigger ones the size of a thumb. There were about a dozen of them. Heavenly orchid silver bamboo. Suyu was shocked. These shards were the shards of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. This item was known as the #1 divine bamboo in Jiuzhou. It was so hard that the black flames could not penetrate it. Furthermore, this bamboo vaguely possessed a spatial attribute. The golden leaf's ability to move 1,000 miles in a single step and teleport was the power of space. Such a precious item was rare even for almighty divine masters. But this woman had taken it out to help him reforge his treasure. He had taken out the 9 yin-yang formation to test her, but this woman had not only taken it seriously, she had even used such a precious treasure. Elderweight, I might not be able to afford such a precious material. Suyu's expression was solemn, but his heart was heavy. Lu Chuyi turned a deaf ear to him. She muttered to herself, "The 9 steel needles are made of ordinary materials, and it's difficult to upgrade their quality. They need to be refined again." After he finished speaking, he took out another smooth object from his pocket. It was a small furnace surrounded by raging flames. After it landed on the ground, it expanded with the wind, and in the blink of an eye, it had grown to 3 feet in size. Lu Chuyi weaved a seal with her hands, and the flames surged and engulfed the whole furnace. At the same time, Lu Chuyi put her palms together, and Suyu's 9 yin-yang formation was completely destroyed. She fused these fragments with the fragments of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo and placed them into the blazing furnace. These fragments melted into a pool of liquid at a speed visible to the naked eye. Immediately after, Lu Chuyi rotated her hands, not caring about the consumption of vital energy to keep the furnace burning. She kept chanting incantations. That ball of liquid gradually turned from gray to silver, then from silver to gold, emitting an astonishing spiritual pressure. This sort of spiritual pressure had already surpassed the scope of a divine weapon. Even a half-divine weapon would find it hard to reach. So you felt his mouth go dry. Could this be a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact? Previously, he had heard from Wei Kong that Lu Chuyi was one of the few crafting masters in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. He did not understand the significance of the title of crafting master, but he was shocked. He had personally witnessed the birth of a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. At this moment, Lu Chuyi stopped chanting incantations, saying, "The tempering is complete. Next is the most crucial step, the materialization. I have never tried crafting a steel needle magical artifact before, so there might be a risk of failure. If I fail, your steel needle, along with the materials I inserted, will be destroyed." Hearing this, Suyu's expression changed. Failure. Just as he was pondering, Lu Chuyi continued, "If you change to crafting a sword-shaped magical artifact, I am 100% confident of success. However, there are too many impurities in your steel needle, and you do not have enough materials. I can only successfully craft 3 sword-shaped magical artifacts. If you are willing, I can help you craft them into swords." Suyu was delighted by the second choice, but he soon became hesitant. The 9 yin-yang sword formation was born from the 9 suns cosmos sword formation. It was because of the 9 steel needles that it could exhibit unimaginable power. If the steel needles were made into swords, the power would be even greater. However, the materials for the steel needles were limited, so he could only craft 3 swords. He could not form the 9 yin-yang sword formation, and its power would be greatly reduced. Weighing the pros and cons, so you could not be sure if the latter option would be disadvantageous. After thinking for some time, Suyu clenched his teeth. "I choose the latter. Even if the power was temporarily reduced, it was better than risking the loss of the 9 steel needles." Lu Chi nodded. "All right." The vital energy in her body surged into the furnace, enveloping the golden liquid. The liquid absorbed a large amount of vital energy, suddenly releasing a strong spiritual quality. It then split into 3, turning into 3 palm-sized swords. The flames in the furnace gradually cooled down from high to low in a rhythmic manner. When the furnace was extinguished, the 3 sword embryos in the air cooled down, turning into 3 palm-sized, exquisite swords that glowed with a golden light. The surface of the swords was as smooth as a mirror, without any flaws, like a woman's skin. The edges of the swords glowed with an ice-cold white light. When Suyu looked at them, even his soul felt a slight prickling pain. Within the bodies of the 3 small swords was a spiritual pressure that only a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact could have. Suyu was overjoyed. He raised his hand, and the 3 small swords landed in Suyu's palm. An ice-cold feeling spread throughout his palm. There was also an indescribable pressure that caused Suyu to take a few deep breaths. The materials for your steel needles were too ordinary, affecting its grade. Originally, with the addition of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, it could at least raise the level of a divine artifact to a spiritual artifact. However, due to the limitations of the materials, it is now only a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. The corners of Suyu's mouth twitched. The steel needles were only middle-grade divine artifacts. Compared to the number 1 divine bamboo of Jojo, their materials were not only ordinary, they were also inferior. This was like forcefully mixing rotten, stinky tofu with dragon's liver and phoenix's bile, greatly lowering the latter's grade. Even though he felt that it was a pity, he was already very satisfied. The first wish has been fulfilled. Are there any more? Lu Chuyi's gaze became even more complicated. How could Suyu, who had tasted the benefits, miss such an opportunity? His gaze shifted as he asked, "Do you have any extra heavenly orchid silver bamboos?" But he continued to ask for the heavenly orchid silver pearls shamelessly. Even Lu Chuyi could not bear to watch. The veins on her forehead throbbed, but after hesitating for a moment, she still took out 2 golden seeds from her ring. "These are the seeds of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. These are all I have." Seeds? Suyu's pupil shrank. He had only wanted to extort some materials, but she had given him the seeds directly. If he could grow a brand new heavenly orchid silver bamboo, then just thinking about it made Suyu extremely excited. As if she understood Suyu's thoughts, Lu Chuyi poured cold water on him. "You are thinking too much. The seed of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo cannot survive unless it is watered with blood by an old monster above the divine master level. Even if a normal person obtained the seeds, they would only use them as materials to refine them. Even if she could really grow the seeds, she would not have taken them out." Hearing this, Suyu laughed secretly and kept the seed without any expression on his face. "Do you have any more wishes?" Lu Chuyi was surprisingly patient. Suyu's gaze flickered. With a wave of his hand, the ground was instantly filled with treasures. The golden scale dagger, armor, purple sun incredible umbrella, mountain river dragon bow, eternal mask. "Help me refine all of them once more," Suyu said with a smile. Lu Chuyi froze, then became enraged. "Lad, don't go overboard. How is this fulfilling a wish?" He was clearly using her as a laborer. She had used up 30% of her vital energy to refine the 9 yin-yang formation once more. With so many treasures before her, how could she refine all of them? "These are my wishes," Suyu said in disappointment. "Forget it if I cannot fulfill them." Lu Chuyi clenched her teeth, glaring at Suyu for a moment. "Fine, I agree." After saying this, she looked over the treasures, her gaze sweeping past the golden scale dagger and the eternal mask. She said with disdain, "One is low level, and the other is broken. There is no value in refining them again. Throw them away." Saying this, she threw the golden scale dagger away without any hesitation, after which, when her gaze swept past the eternal stone king armor, her expression turned serious. "A damaged high-grade spiritual artifact? The material is the bones of a divine master. Unfortunately, I do not have such a material, unless you break my bones." As she spoke, she did not forget to glare at Suyu. After which, she looked toward the purple sun incredible umbrella, hesitating for a moment before nodding her head. "This high-grade divine artifact has some value in refining it again. If I use my Cauldron fire to replace the purple sun fire, I should be able to refine it into a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact." Suyu's heart moved. Another semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. Lu Chuyi finished looking at the last treasure. It was the mountain river dragon bow. Her body suddenly froze, and she grabbed the item in her palm, gently caressing it. "Strange, this is clearly a normal middle-grade divine artifact. Why does it give me an uneasy aura?" After observing it for a moment, Lu Chuyi's expression suddenly changed. She threw the silver bow away as if she had been electrocuted, her face filled with shock. Could it be that the divine arrow is sealed within this silver bow? Suyu's heart shook. He suddenly remembered that Yun Yazi had once said that the mountain river dragon bow was not worth much. What was truly valuable was the arrow sealed within it. Now that Lu Chuyi had such an expression, Suyu became even more curious. Where did you get this bow from? That's impossible, Lu Chuyi said, looking at the silver bow in fear. It has already disappeared from the history of the human race. Suyu's gaze flashed. I obtained it by chance in an underground relic. I wonder if Elder can unlock this bow. Chapter 509. Your silver bow is actually a seal. Once it is reforged, the seal will be undone. Once the arrow inside is released, even I cannot guarantee my own survival. I am sorry, but I cannot reforge it for you. At the same time, I advise you not to erase the remaining 20% of the seal. With your abilities, you cannot control this arrow. Suyu was shocked. Just what kind of arrow was sealed within the silver bow that Lu Chuyi was so afraid of? With a thought, Suyu stored the bow, then looked at the purple sun incredible umbrella. Thank you, Elder. Lu Chuyi reluctantly reforged the purple sun incredible umbrella. After it was broken, it melted into a liquid state. Under the heat of the furnace, the purple sun flames within were completely expelled. The furnace flames replaced them, merging into the umbrella. After 4 hours, Lu Chuyi was covered in sweat. She had less than 30% of her vital energy left. But a brand new purple sun incredible umbrella was born. Unlike its previous purple color, the umbrella was now a fiery red. It was warm to the touch, but a frightening aura seeped out when spirit energy was injected. The flame within my furnace is called the Furious Red Lotus Flames, she said. It is ranked 1,000 on the Divine Flames list. The power of the flames is difficult to defend against unless one is a later stage fairy. Divine Flames list? Suyu was shocked. Ranked 1,000 had the ability to kill anyone below the later stage of the fairy realm. What kind of existence were the ones ranked higher? The reforged umbrella is a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. Are you satisfied? Lu Chuyi asked. Suyu nodded. Yes, I am. Lu Chuyi grunted. You no longer have any treasures to reforge, right? Lu Chuyi had seen the treasures Suyu possessed. No more. Suyu laughed. How would he dare take out a prototype fairy artifact like the 5-elemental strong thunder seal and a treasure like the Cosmos Thunder Sword in front of Lu Chuyi? Does it mean you no longer have any wishes? Lu Chuyi's eyes flashed with coldness. Yes. Suyu's expression was solemn. Lu Chuyi was going crazy, her expression gradually turning grave. Her eyes glowed with a cold light. The last one. Suyu's expression was serious. Not to reforge artifacts, but to ask Elder a question. Only then did the coldness in Lu Chuyi's eyes soften. She snorted and said, Speak. Suyu pondered for a moment, then carefully took out 3 different types of origin energies from his body. The origin of fire, the origin of lightning, and the origin of ice. Cultivating 3 paths at the same time? Lu Chuyi was surprised. In that case, you were the one who performed the fusion of origins in front of the Thunder Emperor Mountain. Suyu didn't deny it, and he solemnly asked, Senior, may I ask how I can safely fuse the 3 origins? The might of the fusion of the origins was even greater than that of the Cosmos Thunder Sword. On that day, even Suyu himself had almost been killed by this technique. This move did not differentiate between friend and foe, and was extremely dangerous. That was why he had never used it again, unless he found a safe way to deal with it. But now, there was an opportunity in front of him. What nonsense! Lu Chuyi took a deep look at Suyu. Even a fairy realm expert would not dare to fuse the 3 elemental energies rashly. You are quite daring. You're lucky to have survived the fusion of the origin that day. Do you want to court death now? That is why I asked for Senior's guidance, Suyu said calmly. Lu Chuyi hesitated for a moment, then said unwillingly, The biggest taboo for the fusion of the origins is that the 3 energies are not evenly distributed. Once that happens, an explosion will occur. What you need to do is to find a way to stabilize the 3 elements. This requires an extremely strong control over the three elements. It is obvious that you, who have not even achieved the level of half-god, will not be able to control them so precisely. The only way is to cultivate the clone technique. As long as you have 2 clones, each controlling one element, it will be possible for you to stabilize it. Clones? Suyu stroked his chin. He had cultivated the remnant volume of the second-grade clone technique. If he successfully cultivated it, he would be able to have 2 clones. It was a pity that he had not been able to improve on it for a long time. Lu Chui took a light breath, muttering to herself, "I have already fulfilled all of your wishes for you. Now, I have a clear conscience about what I am going to do to you." Her abnormal behavior had made Suyu realize that something was amiss. Lu Chui had not hesitated to use a nature-defying treasure like the heavenly orchid silver bamboo to fulfill Suyu's wish. As such, the price Suyu had to pay would definitely not be light. Just as expected, sensing that something was amiss, Suyu, who had been prepared for this, disappeared without a trace with a flash of lightning. Lu Chui froze, then became slightly angry. A golden leaf fell from her sleeves. "Humph! You wish to escape after eating everything?" In order to fulfill Suyu's wish, she had paid a heavy price. How could she let Suyu escape? Activating the golden leaf, he traveled 1,000 miles in an instant. Suyu traveled 100,000 miles in an instant. His figure flickered as he reappeared. He had just left when Lu Chui walked over, coldly looking in the direction that Suyu had disappeared. After a few breaths, Suyu's figure flickered, and he returned to the mysterious heavenly palace. Just as he was about to leave, the space around him tightened. Lu Chui had used a space teleportation technique to imprison him. Suyu knew that this was not good. He was about to activate the dry cloud 5 elemental formation when a light flickered 3 feet in front of him. Lu Chui had stepped forward. Her fair, slender fingers tapped Suyu's body, causing the space around him to freeze once again. This time, not only could he not move his limbs, but even the spirit energy in his body had been completely frozen. He had become a puppet-like existence. Suyu laughed bitterly in his heart. He was still confused. Why had Lu Chui suddenly recovered and fulfilled Suyu's wish? If I had a choice, I would not have done this either. Lu Chui sighed softly. Her expression turned gentle, and she wore an apologetic expression. With a flick of her fingers, Lu Chui brought Suyu to a secluded area on the ground. "Elder, what exactly do you want to do to me?" Suyu felt uneasy. Lu Chui sighed apologetically. "You don't blame me. I had no choice. I had predicted that I would meet with misfortune in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. Hence, I brought a man and a woman with me. The 2 of them performed a yin-yang secret technique together, which allowed me to temporarily recover my divine master cultivation without being restricted by the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, just in case. This secret technique can only be cultivated by a man and woman. But my junior, Wu Aoyue's whereabouts are unknown. Hence, I used Yu-chan to replace her. But when I entered the 8th level of the divine pavilion, Yu-chan disappeared without a trace. The most helpless thing is that the fire poison in my body cannot be suppressed by the golden leaf alone. I need to recover my divine master cultivation level to expel the fire poison. But without a man and a woman, I cannot use the secret technique." Hearing this, Suyu understood. "You mean that you want to replace Wu Aoyue to use the secret technique?" Lu Chui nodded. "If I were to use it, the effects would be weaker. It might be difficult for me to recover to the divine master level, but it would at least be the later stage fairy, which would be enough for me to expel the fire poison." "So, you want me to replace Wei Kong and use the technique with you?" Suyu grinned. Wei Kong had fainted at the wrong time. Lu Chui nodded her head apologetically. "I think the help I gave you just now is enough to compensate you." Hearing this, Suyu could not help but feel discouraged. It was because of Lu Chui that Suyu had been able to obtain many benefits. If he could help her, Suyu naturally would not mind. But, are there any drawbacks? Suyu asked bluntly. Lu Chui was put in a difficult position, not daring to look Suyu in the eyes. She said in a low voice, "Using this secret technique will consume both parties' blood essence. The damage is not light, and it will most likely cause one's cultivation level to regress. Cultivation level regress? Suyu's heart shuddered. Such a severe backlash was no small matter. Many people could never regain their cultivation levels after their cultivation levels regress. It was no wonder that Lu Chuyi was willing to compensate him. Who would easily agree to such a severe backlash? I don't want to do it. Change all those treasures back, Suyu teased, but his mind was racing. Lu Chuyi's face turned red, her eyes apologetic. I'm sorry. Only by using the secret technique to restore my divine master cultivation level will I not be transported out. I still need to stay here and find the secret technique of the mysterious heavenly legacy. I need to save someone. Inyu, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. If Lu Chuyi wanted to expel the fire poison in her body, she could easily do so by restoring her divine master cultivation level. But if she did so, she would be transported out. Only by using the secret technique would she be able to expel the fire poison and still stay. The secret technique of the mysterious heavenly legacy? Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he gave her the book in his arms, she would not have to stay in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. She would not have to forcefully use the secret technique of yin-yang on Suyu. But without waiting for Suyu to speak, Lu Chuyi pointed with her finger. The surrounding space shrank, leaving him with no chance to speak. Suyu wanted to cry. The secret technique of crafting treasures of the mysterious heavenly legacy was with him. This stupid woman. Suyu tried his best to signal her with his eyes as she floated into his embrace, hoping that she would understand. Seeing Suyu's anxious expression, Lu Chuyi could not help but ask, "Is there something in your arms that you want to show me?" Suyu nodded hurriedly, letting out a sigh of relief. This woman was not stupid. But Lu Chuyi's next sentence almost caused Suyu to spit out a mouthful of blood. "You still want to play tricks at this point?" Lu Chuyi said seriously. "I've personally experienced your cunning. I'm sorry, but I cannot let you do as you wish." Suyu was furious. This woman was not stupid to the extreme. She was stupid to the extreme. Please bear with it for a while. The process of casting the technique requires an incantation. Hence, I cannot let you speak for now. Lu Chuyi waved her hands, covering the ground with a dense array of materials. Under his dexterous hands, the different materials followed different trajectories and quickly pieced together to form a small formation that was about 10 feet in size. One was black and one was white, forming a Tai Chi pattern. Lu Chuyi placed Suyu in the white area, while she sat in the black stockings area. Chapter 5:10. Suyu could not help but laugh bitterly. He could only think of another way to block it. Before long, Suyu felt a huge amount of cultivation base seeping out of Lu Chuyi's body. This cultivation base was continuously entering Suyu's body through the spell. In an instant, Suyu understood the theory behind the secret technique of yin-yang. The cultivation base of an almighty divine master was shared between Lu Chuyi and Suyu. At the same time, the spell beneath their feet could conceal their auras, so the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion would not detect them. But how could a mere human king withstand the cultivation base of an almighty divine master? Given the current situation, once the cultivation base entered her body, there was a 100% chance that her cultivation base would regress. Suyu panicked. Seeing the impending danger, a thought flashed in his mind. This was not the first time he had encountered someone else's cultivation base. Hadn't Shunga done it before? Bloodline of the evil ghost. Suyu thought. He had found a way out. The moment the cultivation base entered his body, the bloodline of the evil ghost activated, swallowing the cultivation base that had entered his body. Crack. The appearance of the bloodline of the evil ghost messed up the secret technique of yin-yang. The spell beneath their feet cracked. Lu Chuyi, who had been releasing her cultivation base, suddenly turned pale, spitting out a mouthful of blood. She had suffered the backlash of the spell. Her beautiful eyes widened in shock. "My cultivation base, what did you do?" But before she could finish her sentence, her face turned red, and she spat out another mouthful of blood. At the same time, the backlash of the spell caused her consciousness to become hazy. Her expression changed. Not good. The secret technique of yin-yang has been interrupted. The yin and yang energies are in chaos. Yin and yang energies? Without waiting for Su Yu to understand, he also felt his mind become hazy. A powerful, evil thought grew like weeds. At this moment, he suddenly understood what the yin and yang energies were. The chaos of yin and yang required yin and yang to complement each other. In other words, the two of them had fallen into a state of confusion. In no time, the two of them hugged in the light. When the yin and yang energies returned to normal, Lu Chui looked at the blue sky with lifeless eyes, like a destroyed puppet. Gradually, her beautiful eyes became misty, and her body trembled slightly due to sorrow. She looked miserable and sorrowful. His tightly pursed lips were unable to suppress the sadness in his chest, and his lips trembled. After a while, she could no longer suppress the pain of losing her precious first time. She covered her face and burst into tears. She said in a mournful tone, "I'm sorry, Brother Taishu." She had called out another man's name. At that moment, Suyu also came to his senses. His lips were filled with bitterness. Unintentionally, he seemed to have snatched away a woman's virginity, which was highly valued by her. Moreover, it was a woman whose heart belonged to someone else. Perhaps Brother Taishu was the man she was planning to give her virginity to. However, it had been mercilessly taken away by Suyu. Sorry, Suyu could only apologize. Although to a large extent, this woman had only herself to blame, it was a fact that Suyu had taken away her most precious virginity. Upon hearing this, Lu Chui's body gradually stopped trembling and crying. Her teary eyes were gradually filled with murderous intent. It was true murderous intent. Perhaps she did not like to kill before, or perhaps she was compassionate. But at this moment, she, who had her most precious first time taken away, really wanted to kill someone. Me. Hey, you. Lu Chui clenched her teeth, enunciating each word. The hatred came from her heart, the hatred clearly penetrating Su Yu's heart. Su Yu felt an indescribable sense of loss. He thought back to before the sea of blood, to the stubborn figure who had looked death in the eye without hesitation. He thought back to the ice soul divine dream spell, the snow hut, and the night they had hugged. Su Yu sighed. Those scenes no longer existed. In Lu Chui's eyes, which were filled with hatred, Su Yu saw a stranger to the man named Great Void. Whoosh! Lu Chui's body was covered by a layer of spiritual light, covering her beautiful body and beautiful face. But what could not be covered was the hatred that could not be erased. Die! Lu Chui, who was on the verge of insanity, slammed her palm toward Su Yu. During this process, his aura soared crazily, and he surpassed the half-god realm, the early-stage fairy realm, the middle-stage fairy realm, and finally the late-stage fairy realm. A terrifying aura that did not belong to the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion soared into the sky. The heavens and earth rumbled, the 5 mountains trembling. It was as if the sun and moon had lost their luster. There was also a Tinjiang tall, majestic figure standing behind Lu Chui. His features were exactly the same as Lu Chui's. His indifferent eyes seemed to see through everything, emitting a divine light that could destroy the world. His entire body emitted the aura of an almighty divine master, shocking the surroundings. Su Yu, who was just inches away, felt the blood in his body churn, his breathing stagnant. He could not move an inch. Is this the power of an almighty divine master? Su Yu was shocked, but he let out a deep sigh, his face full of self-mockery. The difference between heaven and earth was once again etched in Su Yu's heart. Looking deeply at the crazed Lu Chui, Su Yu let out a bitter laugh, slowly closing his eyes. He did not even resist. In front of a divine master, any resistance was futile. The wind from the palm struck. Su Yu's body let out a crackling sound, looking like he was about to be crushed. If that palm were to hit him, only death awaited him. Amidst the howling wind, his clothes, which were scattered on the ground, were swept up. A black book fell from his clothes. It was the heavenly crafting secret technique. The crazed Lu Chuyi glanced at the book, clearly stunned. Her attack towards Su Yu turned into a claw, grabbing the book. Chapter 511. When she recalled how Su Yu had been signaling her with his eyes after he had been imprisoned, her body shuddered. Clutching the black book, Lu Chuyi stood motionless until a space energy enveloped her, about to be transported. This book? You intended to give it to me? You were planning to give it to me? Lu Chuyi's voice had become hoarse because of her hysterical roar. Su Yu let out a bitter laugh, not replying. Lu Chuyi was silent, lowering her head to look at the black book in her hands. She was conflicted. While she had been scheming against Su Yu, he had been thinking of her. This shame made Lu Chuyi unable to do anything. She recalled the first time she had chased after him, when he had risked being struck by her palm to save her. She recalled the illusion spell, the snowy wasteland, and the night in the cold hut. Lu Chuyi's heart ached, the hatred in her eyes quickly turning misty. When had this youth's figure been imprinted in her heart? After struggling for a moment, the hatred on her face finally melted, replaced by bitterness. In the end, she was the one who had brought this upon herself. She had a greater responsibility for losing her virginity. The transportation was imminent. Lu Chuyi turned around, grabbing toward the mountain. Wei Kong, who had clearly been at the bottom of the mountain, was pulled out and teleported with her. Lu Chuyi did not look back, nor did she say a word. She disappeared from the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion, leaving Su Yu with a lonely figure. Lu Chuyi. Su Yu looked at her disappearing figure, his heart empty. There was no longer the joy of surviving a disaster. Whoosh, whoosh, Su Yu's expression changed. He put on his clothes, turned, and entered the dense fog. Half a day later, halfway up the mountain, Su Yu stood in front of a half-collapsed cave. It looked like the cave had collapsed many years ago. I wonder what kind of legacy this is, Su Yu muttered. Su Yu muttered to himself. After chasing Lu Chuyi for a while, he could no longer tell which mountain peak he was on. The cave in front of him could very well be the legacy of this mountain. Suddenly, Su Yu's ears shook. A weak sound traveled into his ears from within the cave. His gaze flickered, and Su Yu entered the cave. The cave was straight and long. The walls of the cave were dark brown, and both sides were densely covered with grooves of different sizes. A few of them were filled with bottles and cans. Su Yu grabbed one of the bottles and sniffed it. He couldn't help but be slightly surprised, as there was still a faint scent of elixirs left in it. Could it be an elixir from the 5 great legacies? Su Yu raised his brows. Among the 5 great legacies, the legacy of elixirs was undoubtedly the most tempting. If he was lucky enough, he could break through to the fairy realm in one go. What kind of transformation would that be? Su Yu's figure flickered as he entered the cave. He could hear the commotion coming from time to time, and it was getting more and more intense. When he reached the depths of the cave, he scanned it with his transparent eye and immediately saw a man excitedly attacking the stone wall at the end of the cave. That was the end of the cave. Even though it was empty, there were many traces of man-made excavation on the stone walls. It seemed that the people who had entered before also suspected that there might be other pills in the depths of the stone walls, so they were unwilling to dig. Unfortunately, there was nothing. Su Yu scanned the area with his soul eyes and could not help but feel slightly disappointed. The end of the stone wall was indeed a stone wall, and there was no hidden space. It seemed that the legacy of elixirs had indeed been completely excavated by someone. Just as he was about to leave quietly, a rumbling sound could be heard. The man had dug out a large piece of the black-brown stone wall, revealing a snow-white stone wall. The snow-white stone wall seemed to have been inlaid by someone, and there were strange symbols carved on it. It was a spell hidden between the layers of the stone wall. So he was shocked. He had only been paying attention to the hidden space. How could he have expected there to be something else in the stone wall? The man could not help but laugh maniacally. Ha, Master was right. The legacy of elixirs has not been taken by anyone. There is another universe within the stone wall. As he laughed, the man inserted vital energy into the spell. The spell was activated quickly, transporting him away. Hearing the familiar voice, Su Yu's eyes glowed with a cold light. To think that I would meet Cho Ziming here. Cho Ziming had tried to kill Su Yu twice, but had not succeeded. Su Yu's eyes glowed with a cold light. He inserted spirit energy into the spell and entered it. His feet spun. When Su Yu's feet touched the ground, a cold gust of wind assaulted him, heading straight for the vital parts of his chest. Humph! Su Yu was not surprised. The Eternal Stone King armor appeared. With a loud clang, a sharp object struck Su Yu's chest, creating a series of sparks. Su Yu opened his eyes to see that it was Cho Ziming. He was holding a blood-red dagger in his hand, releasing a shocking spiritual pressure. It was a powerful, high-grade divine artifact. Humph! It's this armor again. Cho Ziming let out a cold grunt, his eyes filled with passion. Without a doubt, Cho Ziming, who was at the brink of the fairy realm, had long sensed Su Yu's presence. He had specially waited for Su Yu to deal a fatal blow. Su Yu let out a cold smile. Long time no see, Cho Ziming. Cho Ziming held the dagger with one hand, the other behind his back. He let out an arrogant laugh. I did not expect you to be so daring as to set your sights on me. In his impression, Su Yu's abilities were exceptional among those of the same cultivation level. But in front of him, it was nothing. Set my sights on you. Su Yu let out a laugh. You think too highly of yourself. What I want is the legacy of this place. As for your life, I'm just taking it along the way. How overbearing were his words. Ha ha ha. Cho Ziming laughed in anger. Where did you get the confidence to take my life along the way? Whoosh. As he let out a cold laugh, a golden light flickered. That golden scale dagger? Insignificant tricks. Cho Ziming was prepared. Without thinking, he slashed with the dagger. Crack. But the next moment, Cho Ziming's expression changed. The blood-red dagger in his hand, a high-grade divine artifact, had been sliced into two. His expression turned grave. Cho Ziming reacted quickly, his figure retreating 100 jong away. At that moment, a golden light flashed from the ground where he had been standing. A golden glow shot out, slicing a deep groove in the ground, as if it were tofu. If he had hesitated any longer, he would have been sliced into two. Semi-manufactured spiritual artifacts, and two of them. Seeing that Su Yu had a dagger in each of his hands, Cho Ziming's face glowed with shock. The corners of Su Yu's mouth curled into a meaningful smile. Two. Ha! Cho Ziming's heart skipped a beat, his heart turning cold. Suddenly, another golden glow shot out from beneath his feet. Chapter 512. At the critical moment, Cho Ziming's shoulder slid, avoiding the fatal spot. The golden light flickered. With a pathetic cry, blood rained down, and an arm flew into the air. Even though he had avoided the fatal spot, he had paid the price of losing his right arm. Cho Ziming grabbed his own arm amidst the intense pain. At that moment, with a whoosh, a golden light attacked, piercing through the arm. After circling in the air, it landed in Su Yu's palm. The palm of the arm was still tightly holding onto the blood-red dagger. He had already discarded the golden scale dagger, and the blood-red dagger had come at the right time. He extended his hand, grabbing the dagger from the palm of the arm. To his surprise, even though the arm had been severed, it could still be controlled by Cho Ziming. Not only did he hold onto the blood-red dagger tightly, he also released a large amount of black demonic energy from the arm, forming a few black arrows, which shot towards Su Yu's face. At such a close distance, Su Yu could not avoid the arrows. Do you think the items of the demon clan are so easily touched? Die. Cho Ziming's features were ferocious, and he let out a ferocious roar. The few arrows let out whooshing sounds as they pierced through the air, heading straight for Su Yu's face. Is that so? Su Yu's expression was calm, not surprised. He opened his mouth, spitting out a crimson-green flame. With a creak, the demonic energy dissipated on the spot, and the arm was quickly engulfed by the flames. The arm was unusually strong. The flames had only burned the outer layer of the sleeve, but the arm itself was unscathed. But in the heat, the arm's palm loosened involuntarily, and the falling blood-red dagger was caught in Su Yu's palm. Cho Ziming was shocked and furious. Not only had he lost his arm, he had also lost the treasure that he had relied on. That was a high-grade divine artifact. What about you? when you try to kill me time and time again. Did you ever think that this would happen? Suyu kept the blood-red dagger, his eyes filled with a cold glow. Cho Ziming froze. Twice. Humph. Including this time, I have only met you twice. How could it be 3 times and time again? Suyu laughed. You chased me for hundreds of thousands of miles in front of the Thunder Emperor Mountain. Have you forgotten so quickly? Thunder Emperor Mountain? Cho Ziming was confused. Then a bolt of lightning flashed in his mind, and he said in shock, You were the one who saved the Phoenix of Death Constitution? Phoenix of Death. So he was trying to get Xian. Suyu's face was gradually covered with a layer of frost. It's good that you know. You can go on your way with peace of mind. Strange gray flames danced in his deep black eyes, making his handsome face look cold and mysterious. The gray flame was the void raging flame that he had forcefully taken from the white-eyed fireglass frog. It specialized in destroying souls. Although most of it was suppressed by the divine nine-dragon Cauldron and could not be fully used, it was still possible to forcefully activate some of it. At the very least, it was more than enough to kill Cho Ziming's soul. When Cho Ziming met Suyu's eyes, he suddenly felt a burning pain in his soul. It was as if his soul had been ignited. His heart was greatly shaken, and his twisted face was quickly replaced by fear. That pair of raging flames gave him an extremely uneasy feeling. Wait! Cho Ziming spoke at the right time and took out an ancient ring from his bosom. Waves of light flowed around the ring, and a terrifying aura that surpassed that of the fairy realm surged within it. That was the power of a middle-stage fairy realm. This is a ring that I paid a hefty price for before entering the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. It contains the attack of a middle-stage fairy realm. Even though the defensive abilities of your dry cloud 5 elemental formation are shocking, the defensive abilities of your spirit energy are limited. You might not be able to block an attack from this ring. Suyu examined the ring, the raging flames in his eyes gradually extinguishing. An attack from the ring could indeed break the dry cloud 5 elemental formation and pose a fatal threat to him. He was confident that he could deal with Cho Ziming if he fought him head-on, but he would also have to pay a heavy price. The mysterious heavenly divine pavilion was about to close, and the situation would only get more dangerous. If he was injured, he might not be able to last until the end. Seeing Suyu put away the void raging flame, Cho Ziming heaved a sigh of relief and put away the ancient ring. Once he used the ancient ring, he would definitely be transported out. Suyu's transparent eyes scanned Cho Ziming's bosom, and a strange light flashed. The grudge between us has nothing to do with life and death. Why we need to risk our lives in the mysterious heavenly palace? We can fight however we want in the outside world. How about that? Cho Ziming carefully took a few steps back. Suyu nodded without batting an eyelid. All right. Looking around, Suyu realized that the space was not big, only a few dozen square feet. There were many grooves of different sizes carved into the stone walls, and there were many intact bottles and jars in them. There are many elixirs here, Cho Ziming suggested. How about we split them evenly? Other than the legacy of elixirs, there are 4 other legacies. I feel that there is no need for us to fight over them here, Cho Ziming suggested. Compared to before, when he had wanted to kill Suyu in front of everyone and take the Eternal Stone King armor without saying a word, it had to be said that fists were the strongest in this world. Only by having the ability to intimidate the enemy would they be willing to reason with you. The weak did not have the right to reason with you. Suyu walked toward the other stone wall and examined the bottles and jars. After looking, Suyu was extremely disappointed. The bottles and jars were well preserved, but the elixirs sealed within could not withstand the passage of time. More than 90% of the elixirs had turned to dust. At that moment, Suyu caught a glimpse of an emerald green color from the corner of his eyes. It was a small, unassuming jade bottle. It was covered in dust, but the green elixir within it gave off a glow that pierced through the jade bottle and was discovered by Suyu. He grabbed the jade bottle with one hand and opened the stopper. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils, forming a green vortex of air. As he breathed in, The entire secret chamber was filled with a faint fragrance. Taking a light breath, Suyu was shocked to discover that there was a disturbance in his dantian. A ball of weak spirit energy circled around, forming the outline of a crystal. The third spirit energy crystal? Suyu was shocked. From the looks of it, it was preparing to form the third spirit energy crystal, allowing Suyu to break through to the level of half-god. Just what kind of elixir was this? Lowering his head to take a look, Suyu saw a pure green elixir lying quietly within the jade bottle. Its entire body was like jade, as if it was a freshly made elixir. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, it would have been hard to believe that this was an elixir that had existed for countless years. Fairy elixir? A surprised voice came from behind Suyu. Looking back, Cho Ziming was staring at the jade bottle in Suyu's hands, his eyes burning with a raging flame. His palms slowly extended into his robes, once again gripping the ancient ring. Looking at his posture, it seemed like he was prepared to fight to the death to obtain the elixir. What kind of elixir was it that Cho Ziming was so determined to obtain? Your name is Inu, right? Can you transfer this fairy elixir to me? If you are willing, I can exchange it with a legendary level cultivation technique. Chapter 513. So he was a little tempted. He thought for a moment, then said, "It might not be impossible, but before we trade, shouldn't you let me know what this elixir is?" Cho Ziming froze, his eyes glowing with delight. His face was full of surprise. "Have you not heard of the fairy elixir? It is an elixir that can turn spirit energy crystals into vital energy crystals." "I see." So you rubbed his chin. After thinking for a moment, he poured the elixir into his mouth. "No." Cho Ziming's expression changed, shouting hurriedly. But it was too late. He could only watch as Suyu swallowed the elixir, his expression extremely ugly. He could not help but scold. You are wasting God's gift." The fairy elixir is used by cultivators who have completed their vital energy crystals to make a breakthrough to the fairy realm. This elixir can directly avoid the heavenly tribulation and guarantee a breakthrough to the fairy realm. You are a human king, not even at the level of half-god. What is the use of eating it? His heart was burning with fury. "I found out from my teacher that there is a secret chamber here," said Cho Ziming. "There might be the fairy elixir in there. You, on the other hand, wasted this medicinal pill." Cho Ziming was furious. He had come to the 8th level of the Divine Pavilion with great difficulty for this elixir, but Suyu had beaten him to it. "Oh, so this is its use." Suyu's face was filled with shock. He opened his palm. The emerald elixir was in his palm. The act of swallowing the elixir had been a feint. Cho Ziming had been too concerned about the elixir and had not noticed Suyu's actions. "You tricked me." Cho Ziming's expression turned sinister. Suyu's lips formed a cold smile. "If I had not tricked you, would you have spoken the truth?" "Humph, turning it into a spirit energy crystal. You sure know how to lie." Cho Ziming's expression turned rigid. "Fine, it is my fault. The deal has been made. Anyway, the fairy elixir is useless to you. Give it to me now, and I will give you a legendary level technique. It is almost impossible for wandering cultivators like you to obtain legendary level techniques. Now that the opportunity is right in front of you, why are you hesitating?" So you kept the elixir calmly saying, "I'm sorry, I have other uses for this elixir." A legendary level technique was indeed precious, but it was obviously not as important as breaking through to the fairy realm. While interacting with the geniuses of Jiuzhou, Suyu had obtained quite a bit of information regarding making a breakthrough to the fairy realm. It seemed like the success rate was not high. For example, even someone as powerful as Yang Yidao had failed once and had no choice but to enter the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion to look for opportunities. It could be seen how precious the fairy elixir, which could guarantee one 100% chance of breaking through to the fairy realm, was. You better think this through. If you reject me, you are rejecting the soul-seizing palace. Cho Ziming was a little anxious. Suyu smiled, but his smile was ice-cold. "Threatening me is the same as threatening your own life." As he spoke, Suyu scanned his surroundings with his transparent eye. After making sure that he had not missed anything, he stepped into the transportation portal and exited the confined space. Cho Ziming was anxious, and he chased after Suyu. However, Suyu was nowhere to be seen in the passageway outside. Only a trace of remnant thunder ripples remained in the air. D***. He used the thunder escape technique to escape. Cho Ziming snorted angrily and chased after him with a furious look on his face. However, not long after he left, lightning flashed in the cave, and a figure walked out. It was Suyu, who had returned. "Ha! You are so easily deceived by a fake legacy." Suyu's lips curled into an unfathomable smile. Staring at the snow-white transportation portal, a blood-red dagger appeared in Suyu's hands, and he slashed down ferociously. With a cracking sound, the transportation portal was split into two halves. At the same time, the wall where the snow-white transportation portal was also split open. Through the crack, what no one expected was that there was a green transportation portal in the deepest part of the wall. That was the real legacy of elixirs. The white transportation portal was only used to conceal the real legacy. When an ordinary person discovered, to their surprise, that there was a mysterious white transportation portal hidden in the middle of the stone wall, their attention would be completely drawn to it. Who would think that there was another world behind the white transportation portal? When Suyu entered the secret room, he felt that something was amiss. Having had the legacy of the secret technique of craftsmanship, he knew that the 5 great legacies were not that simple. As expected, after he tried to split open the white transportation portal, he discovered the real legacy that was hidden within. He took a step into the crack and activated the green transportation portal. After spinning for a while, Suyu appeared in a sealed space that was similar in size to the previous one. However, the stone walls of this space did not have as many bottles and jars as in the previous space. In the spacious secret room, there was only a dust-covered stone table in the center. 2 golden jade boxes lay quietly on the stone table. Suyu's eyes narrowed. His experience with the white-eyed fireglass frog had caused Suyu to not dare underestimate these legacies. As expected, Suyu discovered a beetle that was completely purple in color on the table. Its entire body was emitting a fierce aura. Fairy realm. Suyu was on guard. However, Suyu quickly discovered that this bug did not have any life force. It was only an empty shell. Looking around at the sealed, spacious house without any resources, Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. It's dead? Looks like not all fairy realm beasts can be like the white-eyed fireglass frog, living in an environment that suits them. With a thought, Suyu grabbed the bug in his palm. From the dust covering its body, it was obvious that it had died a long time ago. However, it was still emitting such a fierce aura and had not rotted in the slightest. This was enough to show that it was an extremely powerful creature when it was alive. This could also be considered a treasure. Suyu threw it into the 9 jade spiritual pearl, placing it together with the corpse of the white-eyed fireglass frog. At this moment, Suyu finally had the mood to look at the 2 golden jade boxes. One of them was sealed with a book, the mysterious heavenly elixir cultivation technique. Elixir cultivation technique? Suyu's eyes glowed with excitement. This book was most likely a secret technique that even almighty divine masters coveted. Even though he had never tried to cultivate elixirs, it did not mean that he would not dabble in it in the future. With a wave of his big sleeves, he carefully kept the book. Satisfied, Suyu looked at the second jade box. What surprised Suyu was that he had imagined the jade box that was left behind to contain some kind of precious elixir. However, within the jade box was a ball of glittering starlight. At first glance, it looked like a dark blue Milky Way. It was decorated with stars, and dense energy circulated. It was exceptionally beautiful. What is this? A ball of fog? Suyu grabbed the jade box. At this moment, a wisp of ice-cold aura penetrated his mind from his palm. Congratulations on obtaining the greatest legacy of the mysterious heavenly palace. A vast and ancient voice suddenly reverberated in Suyu's mind. Suyu felt his head go numb, and he could not help but grunt. He was extremely surprised. "Who are you?" Suyu asked coldly. Whoosh! Suddenly, the Milky Way in the jade box flew out on its own, forming the silhouette of a human figure. Hee hee, you're asking me who I am in my place? The silver figure laughed. Your place? So you was at a loss. Chapter 514. Looks like you already know. The silhouette of the Milky Way smiled. Suyu swept his soul eyes across, surprised to find that there were no soul ripples within the Milky Way, only a weak consciousness. I am Tion Jeezy. In the past, I failed to enter the all-creation mortal realm and died. The fairy artifact that I forged, the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, was also destroyed by the disastrous thunder. Before I died, I left my consciousness within the destroyed fairy artifact and left behind the 5 legacies, waiting for the fated one. Hearing this, Suyu's heart shook. Fairy artifact? The entire mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, which had a total of 9 levels, was actually a fairy artifact? Such a shocking piece of news caused Suyu to sink into a state of shock. Also, what kind of level was the all-creation realm? What kind of existence was that? Who was this Tion Jeezy when he was alive? Elder, since you wanted to leave the legacies to the fated one, why did you set up so many dangers? So you did not trust the other party easily. The legacy of craftsmanship, the fairy fire frog. The legacy of elixirs, the fairy bug. For outsiders whose cultivation levels were restricted to below the fairy realm, it was definitely a trap with a high chance of survival. Such a legacy was clearly meant to take someone's life. Furthermore, this legacy of elixirs was hidden so deeply that it was filled with schemes. It was hidden so deeply that it did not want anyone to discover it. Suyu found it hard to believe the rumor of this self-proclaimed Tion Jeezy. It was caused by my disciples. Tion Jeezy sighed. Back when I died, I ordered my 2 disciples to guard the 5 legacies. Because of their bloodline, they could not inherit my legacy. Hence, I ordered them and their descendants to guard the 5 legacies. They could only take a portion of the resources within, but they could not steal the legacies. This was an oath passed down in their bloodline, and they could not go against it. Unless all 5 inheritances are inherited by someone, they will continue to guard this mountain and will never be able to leave. However, what I didn't expect was that even though my 2 disciples had obeyed my orders to the point of their deaths, their descendants had evil thoughts in their hearts and attempted to seize the inheritance by force. Unfortunately, they had an oath in their bloodline and could not go against it. But the binding power of these oaths weakened with the passage of time. For the time being, they won't dare to touch the inheritance. As a result, before the blood oath disappeared, not only did they obstruct those who entered the Heavenly Mysteries Palace, they even massacred them. They even changed the arrangements that I had made before I died, and set up dangers in all 5 inheritances, blocking all those who wanted to inherit the inheritance. It was all for the sake of obtaining all of the inheritances one day. Those so-called descendants of Tion Jeezy's disciples were the self-proclaimed guardians of the Tion G Palace's master, right? No wonder they were guarding the inheritances and slaughtering all those who went up the mountain. It turned out that they were stealing from the inside and had long since decided to take the inheritances for themselves. However, Suyu was still doubtful. Elder, since they covet the legacy so much, why didn't they take the legacy of elixirs that you're in? After all, according to Senior, this is the most important inheritance ground. Hearing this, Tion Jeezy smiled calmly. The closer they are to me, the fiercer the bloodline oath becomes. How would they dare to get close to my will? It was all thanks to them that I was sealed in the depths of the stone wall. It was no wonder that the legacy was sealed in the depths of the stone wall. It must have been because the guards were afraid of it. At this moment, Tion Jeezy's figure shook slightly, showing signs of cracking. Lad, I do not have much time left. I will now entrust you with the inheritance that allowed me to dominate Jiuzhou. After you inherit my legacy, I hope that you can help me with 2 things. Suyu's eyes flashed. If I am suitable for your legacy, I will fulfill your wishes after accepting it. If I am not suitable, I'm afraid I can only pass on the legacy to someone else who is suitable. Hearing this, Tion Jeezy laughed. You're quite alert. But don't worry, what I want to pass on is a treasure. It has nature-defying effects on any cultivator. Oh, what kind of treasure was he talking about? One must know that the same treasure was not suitable for everyone. My treasure is called the Milky Way star sand, Tianjizi said. It is ranked 21 on the ancient god 10,000 weapons roll. What kind of roll was the ancient god 10,000 weapons roll? But ranking 21 did not seem like much. It is only an auxiliary treasure. Its use is to purify. So he was a little confused. What kind of auxiliary treasure was that? It seemed like it was of little value. Elder, I'm afraid I am not suitable for this treasure, Suyu said sheepishly. Tianjizi was not surprised. He sighed. Fine. Since you do not want this Emperor-based Saint artifact, please bring it out and give it to someone else. What? Emperor-based Saint artifact? Suyu almost bit his tongue off. The Milky Way star sand in front of him was an Emperor-based Saint artifact. Above divine artifacts were spiritual artifacts, and above spiritual artifacts were fairy artifacts. Above fairy artifacts were the ethereal Emperor-based Saint artifacts. Suyu had only heard about Emperor-based Saint artifacts from the Thunder Emperor's 9 books. Even an almighty divine master like the Thunder Emperor had never seen an Emperor-based Saint artifact in his life. He had only read about it in books. It was said that Emperor-based Saint artifacts were all created in ancient times. Each of them was an earth-shattering artifact, possessing nature-defying abilities that surpassed the limits of the rules. Suyu had even suspected that the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron was an Emperor-based Saint artifact. How could Suyu not be shocked when he heard that the Milky Way star sand in front of him was also an Emperor-based Saint artifact? I want it. Suyu immediately corrected himself. What a joke. Emperor-based Saint artifact. Another frightening existence comparable to the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Tianjizi let out a faint smile, but he did not make things difficult for Suyu. Instead, he let out a relieved laugh. In that case, my mission has finally been completed. Since you have accepted this old man's inheritance, then listen carefully to this old man's advice. I need you to do 2 things for me. First, find an old friend of mine, Zixia Divine Concubine, and tell her my death. First, pass on a message. Second, my death was caused by a vile person. You need to help me take revenge. Second, seek revenge. So you did not immediately nod. Finding the person is easy. May I ask, what is the name of Elder's enemy, and what is his cultivation level? Hearing that, Tianjizi's tone was filled with deep hatred. That person, Shuedi, was once my senior brother from the same sect. Back then, his cultivation was the same as mine. Right now, he should have long since broken through to the all-creation realm. All-creation. As expected, he was such a powerful being. Elder, you really think highly of me, asking me to seek revenge on such an old monster. So you let out a bitter laugh. Tianjizi said mysteriously, I can feel the aura of Shuedi on you. Even though it is weak, I believe that even if you do not look for him, he will come looking for you one day. In fact, he will be here very soon. Chapter 515. When had he ever interacted with an all-creation monster like the Blood Emperor? Although I do not understand, there are many people in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion who have the aura of the Blood Emperor. They are very similar to the people from 100 years ago. 100 years ago was when the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion had first descended upon the Jinlong continent. Did Tianjizi mean that the people of the Jinlong continent all had the aura of the Blood Emperor? After thinking for a long time, Suyu said, May I ask how much time you can give me? Oh, you seem to be very confident. Tianjizi was surprised. Suyu did not look troubled, instead asking about the time limit. Tianjizi smiled. Perhaps I was not wrong about you. From today onwards, you have 100 years. 100 years had passed. Another 100 years had passed. He had promised the owner of the 9 jade, spiritual pearl, the 9-tailed fox, that he would go to the demonic fox clan within 100 years. To cultivate to the all-creation level in 100 years was not an easy feat, but Suyu had no reason to miss out on the Emperor-based Saint artifact before him. All right, I promise you. Within 100 years, I will find the Zixia Divine Concubine and take revenge for you. Tianjizi nodded, his body dissipating as he sighed. If that is the case, I am satisfied. Tianjizi's Milky Way star sand flashed, and a beam of starlight entered Su Yu's forehead. Then, a Milky Way-like light appeared within Su Yu's soul. The heart oath is already in your soul. If you do not complete it within 100 years, you should know what will happen. The heart oath had always been harsh. If he failed in 100 years, Su Yu would die. Lad, take care of yourself. Before your abilities reach a certain level, do not reveal the Milky Way star sand. Otherwise, you will follow in my footsteps. My wish has been fulfilled, and I have no more worries. Lad, remember the promise you made to me. The Milky Way figure flickered violently, turning into the Milky Way star sand. They all gathered in Su Yu's right palm, silently fusing into his flesh. He did not feel any discomfort. Then, a Milky Way pattern flickered on his palm, like a tattoo. At the same time, Su Yu felt a sense of familiarity in his mind. With a thought, the tattoo disappeared, and with another thought, it reappeared. He was very skilled at controlling it. Elder, don't worry. I will definitely fulfill your last wish. Su Yu bowed toward the direction where Tianjizi had disappeared. Unexpectedly encountering the master of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion and obtaining a great legacy, Su Yu felt as if he was in a dream. After a long while, Su Yu calmed his emotions and lowered his head to look at the Milky Way pattern on his palm. Purify. Where should I apply it? Su Yu was puzzled. He looked around, but could not find anything suitable to try. Hence, he could only give up for the time being. With a thought, he kept the picture. Even the slightest bit of news about an Emperor Baisane artifact would be enough to put Su Yu in grave danger. I don't have much time left. It would be better for me to rush to the other places of legacy first. Su Yu tapped the ground with the tip of his toes and left the place. Not long after he left, traces of black blood suddenly seeped out of the stone walls of the entire inheritance chamber. It was extremely strange. Arriving at the entrance of the passageway, Su Yu did not rush out recklessly. Instead, he quietly scanned his surroundings, using his transparent eye to observe his surroundings. Through the thick white fog, Su Yu's pupils shrank as he realized that there was a person leaning on the giant rock in front of him. An ambush? But upon closer inspection, the person had no signs of life. It was a corpse. Filled with suspicion, Su Yu quietly walked over. When he got closer, his expression turned grave. Cho Ziming. This corpse was actually Cho Ziming. Hadn't he left to chase after Su Yu? Why had he died here? His clothes were neat and tidy, and there were no obvious signs of a fight. It could be said that he had been killed in an extremely short amount of time. His abilities were that of a half-fairy with a crystal realm top class. Unless the fairy realm of this place had acted, who else could kill him so easily? Filled with suspicion, Su Yu carefully examined the corpse. After looking, his expression turned even more grave. He realized in shock that although Cho Ziming's corpse looked complete, the flesh and blood beneath his skin had all been sucked dry, leaving him in a shriveled state. His cultivation level had also been sucked dry. It's the silver puppet. Su Yu gasped. Only the silver puppet was able to achieve such a feat with such a similar technique. He was nearby, so Su Yu could not help but shudder. He grabbed the silver puppet's corpse and quickly retreated into the passageway, carefully concealing his aura. If he encountered the silver puppet, he would not have any chance of survival. After waiting for a long time, Su Yu relaxed when he saw that the silver puppet was nowhere to be seen. Lowering his head to look at Cho Ziming's corpse, Su Yu scanned his body and realized that it had been plundered. Anything of value had been taken away. I hope that the ancient ring has not been discovered by the puppet. Su Yu slammed his palm onto Cho Ziming's chest. With a thud, a dent appeared on Cho Ziming's chest. But strangely, there was a flash of spiritual light within the dent, and an overflowing ring appeared out of thin air. It was a ring that contained an attack from a middle-stage fairy realm. This was Cho Ziming's protective talisman. Once it was used, apart from the silver puppet, the rest of the people in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion would instantly turn to dust. Su Yu was elated. My luck is not bad. Previously, when he was facing off against Cho Ziming, Suyu had used his soul eyes to discover that Cho Ziming had placed the ancient ring in his robes, but in reality, he had placed it in a special space within his body. Because of that, the silver puppet had plundered everything, but had not found the most important ancient ring. Keeping the ring, Suyu looked at Cho Ziming's withered corpse and could not help but sigh. Half a month ago, Cho Ziming's name had spread far and wide, but now, half a month later, he had been reduced to a corpse, mysteriously fallen. This made Suyu's heart tremble. On the path of the martial path, if one did not advance, one would fall behind. If one was not careful, one would not even have a corpse left, ending up like Cho Ziming. Suyu's heart of the martial path became even more solid. After leaving the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, he had to find a way to achieve a breakthrough. Finally, Suyu buried Cho Ziming's corpse and left alone. An hour later, Suyu targeted the first mountain peak and floated into the clouds. He did not know what kind of legacy was in this mountain peak. At that moment, Suyu's transparent eyes suddenly detected a sneaky figure. The figure had a head of green hair. Even though his cultivation level was only at the level of a human king, he was very agile. He avoided groups of ferocious beasts and quickly left in a certain direction, heading toward the fourth mountain peak. Shurjia? Didn't he follow that heavenly ghost Shunga? Why would he appear here? Could something have happened in front of me? At that moment, the fog in the direction he had escaped to was churning. He could faintly hear the sounds of fighting, as well as a few familiar feminine voices. There were also a few angry roars of men. Chapter 516. In the shade of the mountain peak, colorful lights flickered continuously, accompanied by roars of anger. Of the seven lords of darkness, Bai Luo, Yu, Qing Zhu, and the others were all present. They had somehow found their way to the shade of the fourth peak, surrounded by a swarm of black bees. These black bees were at least the size of a fist, with black hooks on their tails. They gave off a faint stench, clearly venomous. There were not many of them, only a dozen or so, but each one was at the level of a human king. Among the 10, there was one that was special. Its entire body was purple, a half-god level purple bee. Of the seven lords of darkness, other than Bai Luo, who was a half-god, only Lord Yu and Lord Qing Zhu were human kings. The rest were heaven masters. At that moment, the 10 black bees seemed to have gone berserk, attacking them without fear of death. Looking closely, the eyes of these black bees were slightly red. Like the demonic beast that had attacked Suyu and the others, they had been affected by humans and were extremely violent. Under the combined attack, the seven lords of darkness were in danger, relying on Bai Luo, Yu, and Qing Zhu to hold on. The attacks of the heaven masters landed on the bodies of the black bees, but they could only push them back, unable to cause any harm. On the other hand, the black bees attacked fearlessly, each attack causing the blood of the heaven masters to boil. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the heaven masters were as pale as paper. At that moment, a black bee saw an opportunity, passing through the defense and landing on the neck of one of the heaven masters. The black hooks on its tail rose high, then pierced downward. Ah! The seven lords of darkness immediately cried out in pain. They saw a black plum blossom-sized spot appear on their necks where they had been stabbed. Very quickly, the black plum blossom spread throughout his body. Seeing this, Iyu's expression changed. She released a ball of water vapor from her palm, shaking off the entangling black bees. She then flew over, a vortex of water vapor circling her slender palm. She immediately pressed it against the wound he had been stung. The swirling water vapor contained a strong suction force. A black, thin needle was extracted from the flesh of the plum blossom wound. At the same time, a large amount of smelly and black blood was forcefully extracted. The wound gradually turned from black to normal. "Thank you, Yu," the Lord said gratefully. Qing Zhu also revealed a gratified expression. His gaze toward Lord Yu was filled with gratification, admiration, and deep affection. He said with concern in a gentle voice, "Yu, you have worked hard." This was the third person Yu had saved. Otherwise, with their overall strength, there was absolutely no reason for them to persist for the time to finish half a cup of tea without suffering any casualties. It was all thanks to EU. She was proficient in water-based techniques and was adept at healing wounds and absorbing poison. However, after doing it 3 times in a row, EU's palm had a faint black aura surrounding it. This was a sign that she had been poisoned. After saving so many people, she was also affected. His face was covered by the mist, and his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. She had to deal with the black wasps and save people at the same time. She had consumed a lot of energy, and with the poison in her body, she was barely holding on. Be careful! Suddenly, a black bee took the opportunity to attack EU's back. Qing Zhu let out a low grunt and lifted his palm to send him flying. His expression was anxious as he said, "Bai Luo, EU can't hold on much longer. We should retreat. If we continue to force our way through, I'm afraid that we will suffer casualties." Bai Luo was still fine. Aside from the fact that he had expended a lot of spirit energy, he only had a few shallow wounds on his body. Hearing this, he swept his gaze across everyone. His expression sank, and he shouted, "Hold on for a little longer. We have finally found the comprehension of one of the 5 great legacies. We cannot let it go just like this." Qing Zhu was a little dissatisfied. However, hearing about the 5 great legacies, he could only clench his teeth and persevere. After a while, Bai Luo and the Purple Bee had fought for more than 10 rounds. After causing the other party to show signs of fatigue, his eyes flashed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! The Purple Bee was caught off guard. 9 space vortexes suddenly appeared in 9 directions around its body. At the same time, Bai Luo took out 3 daggers of different shapes and sizes and threw them into the space vortexes. At that moment, 3 of the 9 space vortexes shot out daggers, hitting the surface of the Purple Bee's body. Pooh, a soft, dull sound could be heard. Out of the 3 daggers, 2 were bounced off the surface of the bee's body. Only one of them shot into the soft abdomen below its wings. However, it was not deep enough to kill it. Feeling the pain, the Purple Bee became even more violent. It crazily hit the 9 space vortexes like a trapped beast. Under the strong impact, the space vortexes trembled continuously. Bai Luo was affected. He could not help but groan, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Humph! Still thinking of resisting, Bai Luo furiously struck out with his palms. His palms were in the 9 space vortexes, and he attacked from all sorts of tricky angles. The Purple Bee shrieked continuously, and its resistance became even more intense. This happened 3 times. The Purple Bee, which was trapped and attacked continuously, could not hold on any longer. Finally, Bai Luo found an opening. He pierced the dagger into its heart from its abdomen, crushing its heart into pieces. The Purple Bee roared violently. Its body expanded and shrunk. Then, with a pop, it exploded like a balloon. The air was filled with a fishy smell, and some poisonous liquid splashed in all directions. The giant stinger at the end of the bee shot out rapidly from the explosion, hitting one of the space vortexes. At that moment, the space vortexes shook unstably. Then, with a poof, they were destroyed on the spot. Bai Luo's face turned red, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he did not have time to be surprised. The stinger had pierced through the space vortexes and was still heading straight for him. Humph! Bai Luo gave a cold grunt. The remaining 8 space vortexes once again merged to form a giant space vortex in front of him. It also produced a suction force, sucking the stinger into it. The giant space vortex shook for a while, then slowly stopped. The stinger was finally suppressed, as it could not sustain its momentum. As such, the half-god Purple Bee was finally destroyed. Bai Luo wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his face filled with anger. If not for the Black Snow Devil King snatching away my 9 yin-yang formation, I would not have been in such an embarrassing situation. EU, who had witnessed everything, did not think much of it. Even if the steel needle had not been lost, it would still have been difficult for Bai Luo to kill the Purple Bee. Bai Luo, come and help us. Qing Zhu was hit in the chest by 3 black bees at the same time, and he retreated continuously. Hearing this, Bai Luo's eyes were filled with anger, and the 9 space vortexes all appeared. With Bai Luo around, the pressure on the rest of the people was greatly reduced. With their cooperation, they counterattacked, and in no time, they had killed the 10 black bees. Everyone felt as if they had just survived a disaster. They happily kept all the black bees on the ground, treating them as spoils of war. Phew! Lord Qing Zhu wiped the sweat from his forehead and took a few deep breaths. After the fierce battle, he had used up more than 90% of the spiritual energy in his body. I did not expect the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion to be so dangerous. Just a few black bees are at the half-god realm. If it were in the Jinlong continent, it would be unimaginable. Qing Zhu sighed, his face filled with lingering fear. They had followed the instructions of the King of Darkness and had not encountered any danger along the way. They had safely stepped into the 5 peaks. Moreover, they had successfully completed the mission of the King of Darkness and had set up the sacrificial ceremony. Everything had gone smoothly, and they had not encountered any danger in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. The black bees that they had encountered today were the first great danger that they had encountered. Lord Eu creased her brows. I suggest that we retreat from this place. According to the king, the 8th level of the divine pavilion is not a place that we can set foot in. These black bees might be strong enemies for us, but it is very likely that they are just the most ordinary fierce beasts in the 8th level of the divine pavilion. Moreover, the 5 peaks are a great legacy that the military families have fought over. We are lucky that we did not encounter the geniuses of the Jiuzhou continent. It is best that we leave immediately before they discover us. Hearing this, Qing Zhu fell into deep thought. He trusted Lord Eu from the bottom of his heart. However, he had found a legacy with great difficulty, and he was unwilling to give it up just like that. You are boosting the morale of others, but diminishing your own prestige. Bai Luo grunted. Do the geniuses of the Jiuzhou continent have 3 heads and 6 arms? We're all cultivating. Even if we're lacking in resources, our comprehension, hard work, and talent are all lacking. How big is the difference in strength between us? His words made the few lords feel comfortable. They had been chosen by the King of Darkness, and every one of them was a top genius in the Jinlong continent. They were not willing to accept the reality that they could not compare to the geniuses of Jiuzhou. Chapter 517. Let's go in. Bai Luo did not look at Lord Eu anymore, leading the group into the Black Forest. This Black Forest, which was only a few thousand square meters, was the legacy of the 4 peaks. Comprehension. However, before they had even stepped into the forest, 3 figures escaped in a panic from within the dense forest. They were all half-gods, and all of them were top-notch half-gods. Their faces were filled with fear, as if they were escaping from something. They had just flown out of the forest when they unexpectedly met Bai Luo and his group. Wandering cultivators? The 3 of them creased their eyebrows. The 3 of them stopped in front of Bai Luo and his group. The leader was a half-naked man with bronze skin. His entire body, including his face, was covered in tattoos of different sizes. He looked very strange. The 2 on his left and right were probably the same. Senior brother Zhang, let me deal with them. They are just a few wandering cultivators. How dare they covet the legacy of the giant tattoo faction? The junior on the right laughed coldly. The one on the left was much calmer, coldly saying, let me capture them first and use the soul-searching technique on them. With their abilities, it is clear that they're the same as us, bypassing the stone forest transportation and entering the 5 peaks through another shortcut. We must capture them and interrogate them. It is better not to let wandering cultivators know such a secret. These words caused Bai Luo's heart to turn cold. It also caused the hearts of the other lords of darkness to rise to their throats. With such unfamiliar faces, they were undoubtedly geniuses of the world of Jiuzhou. Bai Luo could not sense senior brother Zhang, who was in the lead. However, the 2 half-gods beside him gave him a sense of danger. They were top-notch half-gods that were no weaker than Long Wuxin. For the first time, Bai Luo finally believed what Lord Eu had said. The geniuses of Jiuzhou were frightening, extraordinarily frightening, especially Senior Brother Zhang, who could not sense Senior Brother Zhang at all. Bai Luo even had a feeling that if Senior Brother Zhang wanted to, he could kill him with one move. At that moment, the 7 Lords of Darkness were all terrified, their hearts thumping wildly. Senior Brother Zhang looked around at the few of them. His gaze was calm, without any ripples. However, this kind of gaze caused a few great sages present to tremble in fear. Forget it. The crystal bees are about to catch up. We don't have time to deal with them. Let's go. After saying that, Senior Brother Zhang disappeared with his 2 junior brothers. Having escaped from the gates of hell, they all heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Their taut nerves that were about to break finally relaxed, and their bodies felt like they were going to collapse. Qing Zhu's face was pale, and his voice trembled a little. Then, are those the geniuses of the 9 prefectures? How terrifying! Bai Luo secretly clenched his fists, forcing himself to regain his composure. However, his heart was still beating wildly. They were the geniuses of the 9 states. He was indeed frightening. He was even more frightening than the geniuses of Jiuzhou that Lord Yu had mentioned. On the contrary, among them, Lord Yu was the calmest. We must leave immediately. The crystal bee, which can make even the geniuses of Jiuzhou flee, is not something we can handle. This time, no one refuted him. Also, I'll suggest one last time. We should immediately retreat to the 7th level of the Divine Pavilion. The land of the 5 peaks is not something we can take a step into. No one questioned his words anymore. Having personally experienced the terror of the geniuses of the 9 prefectures, they had no intention of competing. However, just as they were about to fly away, suddenly, the sound of raindrops hitting the tiles could be heard from within the dense black forest. Looking over, there was a large swarm of bees flying out from within the black forest. There were only 100 of them, but the lowest color was black. In other words, there were 100 strong martial artists of the human king level. There were a total of 10 purple, half-god purple bees. 1 purple bee had already caused Bai Luo to be exhausted, let alone 10 more of them. Even if it was Bai Luo, he could only die on the spot. However, their leader was not a purple bee. Instead, it was a crystal bee that was the size of a rabbit at the very front. Its aura was even more frightening. From its body, Bai Luo could feel the aura of the fairy realm. Such a shocking scene caused them to not even dare to breathe loudly. They had even forgotten to escape, and their eyes were filled with despair. Lord Yu was the first to recover from her shock. She shouted in a low voice, "Run!" She was the first to escape, followed by Bai Luo. Next was Qing Zhu, followed by the rest of the lords. However, the bee did not chase them out of the dense black forest. Instead, it looked at Bai Luo and the rest from afar, letting out a sharp cry. This simple cry actually contained an unimaginable sound wave. The last 3 lords could only hear a pathetic cry before they turned into minced meat on the spot. Seeing that, the swarm of purple bees flew overexcitedly, greedily devouring the flesh and blood in the air. They were enjoying themselves. Following which, Qing Zhu let out a groan, tumbled a few times, and fell onto the ground. His body could not move at all. A purple bee was the first to notice, letting out an excited cry. It landed on Qing Zhu's body greedily, with its body covered in minced meat. It was prepared to enjoy this fresh meal. Bai Luo was also hit by the sound wave, and he almost fell. However, he managed to stabilize his body by a hair's breadth. However, just as he was about to escape, he shockingly realized that a wisp of sound wave had formed a comprehension chain. It had bound him, making it difficult for him to move. Although Lord Yu's reaction was fast, her cultivation level was not high, and she could not escape. Her body froze, and she stood motionless on the spot. The bloodthirsty purple bees pounced over as if they had gone berserk. 5 of them landed on Bai Luo's body, while the other 2 landed on Lord Yu's body, reeking of blood. They extended their sharp forelimbs, wanting to plunder fresh flesh from her body. Lord Yu's heart thumped, and her beautiful eyes were filled with despair. She could not help but close her eyes, enduring the cruel pain that was about to come. However, at that moment, a few whooshing sounds could be heard in the air, following which muffled whooshing sounds could be heard, after which the buzzing sounds that filled the air became silent in an instant. Lord EU opened her eyes, gasping as she realized that the ground was littered with the corpses of the bees. The bees that had attacked them, including the purple bees, had all been cleanly cut into two and were scattered on the ground. The back of a silver-haired, dark-robed young man stood with his hands clasped behind his back, calmly looking at the crystal-colored bees. At that moment, a cool breeze blew past, gently lifting the long silver hair that hung down. In the air, it reflected a bright and dazzling silver light, making the tall and slender figure look like he had come out of a dream. He did not look like someone from the mortal world. This scene stunned you. It was as if her heart had been ruthlessly struck by an iron hammer. This figure, this silver-haired figure, this familiar aura that had appeared in her dreams countless times, this aura that she had missed time and time again in her memories. At that moment, Xia Jingyu forgot to think, forgot to breathe, and even forgot herself. In her eyes, there was only this silver-haired figure,